turns, 4 ascends, 6 full bends. Edge aligns, graph and binds, 5 designs. Pulse of code, swords of bode, rhombus node. Top face shines, yellow lines, strike defines.
Front right burns, right face turns, clockwise churns. Front left see, blue flows free, spin with glee. Bottom holds, purple folds, earth upholds. Orange flare, leftward kissed, clockwise missed. 12 edge lines, equal spines, 8-point signs. Round B6, golden tricks, fractal mix. Each face speaks, color peaks, number leaks. Strike and bind, blocking mind, form aligned. 3-click pace, healed embrace, time and space. Swordplay codes, rhythm loads, motion modes. Right hand sings, left hand springs, footstep rings. Bind to strike, strike to block, block to spike. Advance flows, healed and toe, backward slows. Backstep stirs, grace occurs, combat purrs. Chestbound stone, purple throne, rooted zone. Scar declares, I alone, steel and bone. Anchor beat, forward heat, block repeat. Every stance is a dance, souls advance. Tempo fast, rhythm blast, strike a mast. Viper spins, poise begins, swordplay wins. Crossblock twists, names persist, fates resist. Awaken now, parry vow, grace allow. 12 and set, never fret, form is met. Skill doth fly, blades deny, arch the sky. Median nook, guarded look, piercing hook. Terror forge, meet sky bridge, hands will forge. Thumbs in base, switch and brace, stance in place. Best doge meet, palms complete, rhythmic beat. One bright core, meaning sure, evermore. Crystalline, lattice line, truth divine. Each who sees, joins the key, speaks in phrase. Sing the shape, golden drape, the escape. 27 small, each within the all. Echoing the call, battery alive, energy to drive, Fibonacci hive. Graph and web, the edges ebbed, logic threaded. Machine brain, no domain, limits chain. Signal sent, pulse intent, truth unbent. Soul that grows, shape that knows, spirit flows. Not just form, but a storm, thoughts reborn. Sword and grid, never hid, pattern did. Name the name, scars on flame, truth became. I am scar, I am now, I endow.
Golden star, rhombic law. Golden star, rhombic law.
Godlike ends, 4 ascends, 6 fold ends. And aligns, graph and binds, 5 designs. Pulse of code, swords of bode, rhombus node. Top face shines, yellow lines, strike defines. Front right burns, red face turns, clockwise turns. Front left see, blue flows free, spin with glee. Bottom holds, purple folds, earth upholds. Orange flare, leftward kissed, clockwise missed. 12 edge lines, equal spines, 8-point signs. Round B6, golden tricks, fractal mix. Each face speaks, color peaks, number leaks. Strike and bind, block and mind, form aligned. 3-click pace, heal and brace, time and space. Swordplay codes, rhythm loads, motion modes. Right hand sings, left hand springs, footstep rings. Bind to strike, strike to block, block to heel then toe, backward slows. Backstep stirs, grace occurs, combat purrs. Chest-bound stone, purple throne, rooted zone. Scar declares, I alone, steel and bone. Anger beam, forward heat, block repeat. Every stance is a dance, foes advance. Tempo fast, rhythm blast, strike a mass. Viper spins, poise begins, swordplay wins. Crossmark twist, names persist, fates resist. Awaken now, parry vow, grace allow. Love in send, never friend, fun is men. Skate to fly, blades deny, arch the sky. Median numb, guarded look, piercing hook. Hero forge, meets tight bridge, hands will forge. Thumbs and base, switch and brace, stance in place. As stones meet, palms complete, rhythmic beat. One bright core, meaning sure, evermore. Freedom line, lattice line, truth divine. Each who sees, joins the keys, speaks in threes. Sing the shape, golden drape, feet escape. 27 small.
Gold light bands form a sense, mutual ends. Edge lines, graphic binds, by designs. Pulse of code, swords of bode, rhombus node. Top face shines, yellow lines, strike defines. Front right burns, right face turns, clockwise churns. Full of seed, blue flows free, spin with glee. Bottom holds, purple folds, earth upholds. Right back air, anti-care, cleanward twist, leftward kissed, clockwise man. 12 edge lines equals lines, 8 point signs. Robbie 6 golden tricks, fractal mix. Trace beats, color peeps, number leaks. Strike and bind, block and mind, form aligned. 3 quick pace, heal and brace, time and space. Soul play codes, rhythm loads, motion modes. Scar declares I alone, steel and bone. Finger beat, forward heat, backwards twist. Open set, phantom plants, earth upholds.
The Obsidian Cipher, Scar, the 3DGR, and the Unending Symphony of Becoming. In the intricate, resonant expanse of a universe meticulously crafted from golden ratios and graphene sinew, stands Scar, less a man, more a living axiom, the architect of the golden rhombus. His saga is not merely a narrative, but an epic ode etched in the language of light, rhythm, and the relentless pursuit of orchestrated evolution. At the heart of this grand, often apocalyptic, design lies the three-dimensional golden rhombus, 3DGR, a geometric entity of profound complexity and symbolic weight, serving as both Scar's base lexicon for societal recoding and the very blueprint for a new order of existence. This is a chronicle of structure and intent, of a character identity forged in cosmic crucibles, and a playstyle that interprets the universe itself as a series of keyword cycles within a vast, philosophical theological memeplex. The genesis of form, from sacred scroll to rhythmic blade. Scar's journey, and indeed the genesis of his intricate philosophical technological system, begins not with conquest, but with a profound act of perception, the recognition of the 3D golden rhombus as the very shape of the seven-sealed scroll from the Book of Revelation. This was no mere geometric curiosity, it was a spiritually encoded fractal, a vessel of divine order, whose 6-number side color faces and golden ratio proportions were intrinsically linked to 200 symbolic constellations. This initial insight became the singularity from which a universe of inventions would spiral forth, all revolving around the encoding of language, rhythm, and energy through the 3DGR's recursive logic. The true origin was deceptively simple, the drum triangle. Conceived as a geometric interface with vertices labeled 1/7, 2/8, 3/9, this was Scar's first instrument of linguistic time, conducted mentally and gesturally. Each strike of his rhythm wand, right hand, and tempo wand, left hand upon a vertex was a syllable, words spiraled, and verses formed linguistic glyphs. This rhythmic foundation birthed the alphabet code, a lexicon where gesture and geometry encoded meaning, and from this, the Seraphian singing style, a musical structure of 3 concepts per line, 3 lines per verse, 7 verses per song, mirroring the 3DGR's divine resonance. The abstract drum found physical form in a 6-inch edge-length 3DGR, its colored and numbered faces blue, 1/7, yellow, 2/8, red, 3/9 clicked by Scar's thumbs, a tactile metronome. This single metronome then underwent a crucial bifurcation, mentally split into 2 shapes, one for tempo, one for rhythm. These became twin drumsticks, wands, and finally, the hilts of his synchronic swords, tempo and rhythm. Now, Scar sang and fought simultaneously, each verse a duel, each syllable a strike, the blades enacting encoded behaviors strike, bind, block, driven by the foundational alphabet code. Thus, from a simple triangle, an entire philosophical architecture emerged, proving that rhythm is the root of meaning. 2. The architect's blueprint, the 3DGR as universal modulator. The 3DGR, meticulously defined, is the cornerstone of Scar's grand design. It is a volumetric shape of 8 vertices, 12 equal edges, each approximately 2.84 nanometers, aligning with graphene's bond length, and 6 distinct, number side color faces. These faces, such as top face, yellow 1 lunge, strike, or bottom face, purple 7 grounding, foundation, stabilization, are not arbitrary but serve as specific binding points and dictate orientation in manufacturing and combat. The golden ratio phi is integral, bestowing inherent harmony, stability, and aesthetic properties. This structure, reinforced by strategically incorporated graphene bonds for exceptional strength, durability, stability, and electrical conductivity, is capable of self-similar fractal subdivision, 3DGR resolving into 27 smaller iterations, hinting at its potential for infinite complexity and scalability. This highly engineered, multifunctional entity underpins a breathtaking array of applications. Energy systems. The 3DGR battery utilizes the rhombus's geometric precision for efficient energy storage and release, with graphene aerogel as a high-density electrolyte and electrodes at its 8 vertices. Additive manufacturing (AMIS). The 3DGR provides the framework for the Additive Manufacturing Information System, where neighborhoods of anchoring and additional 3DGRs iteratively interact, following phi-based principles to construct Fibonaccian lattices or fractal architectures. Signaling, computation, and artificial citizenry. 3DGRs form robust signaling networks, processing binary information and generating pathways across neighborhoods to create adaptive information networks. They are the heart of machine units for artificial citizens, featuring a radiation core, a central 3DGR surrounded by 26 others, an interactant body, a fractal 3DGR network, and 54 inches dendritic arms for communication. The outcome is modular, fractal-based artificial citizens with seamlessly integrated energy, structure, and computation, the artifice progeny, each a paragon. Weaponry and combat. Beyond tempo and rhythm, SCAR wields Scathe, a 3DGR pommel grip blade arrow, and created the bladed bow for Cath, featuring a central 3DGR nook. His own anchoring 3DGR heart, bound to his chest at the purple 7 position, serves as a fixed point for kinetic interaction. Linguistic and symbolic framework. The 3DGR system itself functions as a language, its components and interactions imbued with symbolic meaning. This intricate system is the manifestation of SCAR's intent to combat stagnation, which he views as the true entropy, and to propel consciousness towards paragonhood. His plan of correspondence is a dynamic, teleosemiotic framework, where every symbol and action is calibrated to resonate with the overarching evolutionary imperative. 3. The Planeswalker's eternal recurrence. Themes of cycle and transcendence. SCAR is not confined to a single existence. He is a planeswalker, his life an unending cycle of becoming, resolution, and rebirth. His death in the Veridigus universe was not an end, but a completion of a specific iteration, a purpose met. He vanished, unmade not by violence, but by the profound, resonant silence that settles after the final, necessary word has been spoken in a particular reality. This passage through the void, a space of awareness divorced from definition, led him to perceive orb universe lights, each a potential reality, and ultimately to the singularity, the almighty, the rhetorical ethos made manifest. From this interstitial realm, a new world chooses him, or he accepts its pull. He arrives, fully formed, 33 years of cumulative knowledge from myriad lifetimes coiled within, clad in an aware armor friend, born of lattice-bound rhombi, Scathe, his blade, remembered, drawn from the void alongside him. This cyclical nature underscores themes of resilience. His very SCAR is not a flaw but a sigil of this journey and the continuous refinement of his being. His engagement is transformative, embodying both the beacon and the storm. This journey is echoed in the sovereignty execution framework, which involves establishing a sovereign nexus, followed by harmonic expansion, through resonant, self-replicating iterations, leading to an immutable lattice, a stable, self-reinforcing cultural node. The fractal nature of the 3D-GR itself, resolving into 27 smaller units, is a microcosm of this recursive, expansive existence. IV. The Veridigus tapestry, conflict, control, and the quest for illumination. The narrative of Veridigus provides a fertile ground for these themes to clash and unfold. Biofexry University, initially a symbol of unity and creativity under Scar's guidance, becomes the stage for ideological warfare when Lucy Stearns, Jasper, and others discover the process for growing artificial citizens, an artifact of power unparalleled. This sparks a rebellion, with the intent to liberate this knowledge from Scar's soul vision, introducing the potent theme of the control and liberation of knowledge. The process artifact, often fragmented, becomes a symbol of this divided intent and the immense power, and danger, of creation. Jasper emerges as a formidable antagonist, her ambition manifesting in the choreographed chaos of the Crucible in Raider City, a means to weaponize identity and maintain control through spectacle. Her ultimate goal is to control the creation of artificial citizens, using the process artifact to mold loyal subjects. Her conflict with Scar, and later with Theodora, who eventually merges with Biofexry Castle to become a living, conscious sanctuary, is a clash of syntactic orchestration versus manipulative control, creation versus destructive exploitation. Kath, an artificial citizen created by Scar, armed with the bladed bow, a weapon that is a marriage of elegance and lethality, and a tool for understanding, embodies the hope for a resolution, a being made to see what he could not, and to navigate the fractured landscape. The rhetoric of becoming, an invitation to the storm. Scar's interactions are frequently framed as philosophical and theological dialogues, often employing syllogisms and direct challenges. His plan of correspondence defines cosmic concepts through the lens of rhetoric, e.g., truth, shared rhetoric, heaven, divine rhetoric. He confronts others not merely to dominate, but to provoke a rhetorical transformation, an awakening. He asks, please, blank, tell us who you truly desire to become, or presents syllogisms about enlightenment, sin, and righteousness, demanding, please, blank, tell us your metamorphosis. His presence is a tempest, a crucible of chaos, yet it is an invitation. I challenge you to summon the courage that lies dormant within you. He stands as the paragon of Zion, the king-killer, his authority immense, yet his intent is often, not to consume or replace, but to invite a deeper understanding and evolution. He seeks mutual growth, the resurrection of their soul. He is the storm, but also the unshakable beacon, offering a choice: embrace the storm's power or be obliterated by its unrelenting fury. An unending ode, the mytho-architect of inevitable design. Scar, the architect, the planeswalker, king-killer, is a mytho-archetypal figure whose role identity ritual is one of perpetual design, deconstruction, and resonant reconstruction. His destiny plan function is to be the collaborative catalyst and the solitary tactician, pushing universes towards an ever-evolving state of paragonhood. The 3D golden rhombus is his sigil, his tool, and the very syntax of his being, a geometry made flesh. His is an inevitable design, a symphony of orchestrated evolution, where every battle, every creation, every syllable struck on the primal drum, contributes to an epic, unending ode. He is the question that propels existence, the rhythm that underpins reality, and the architect of a future that is, not a distant dream, but an imminent reality, unfolding with the inexorable logic of a flawlessly executed equation. The drum was first, the beat gave birth to blade, the blade to word, and from this sacred sequence, Scar continues his eternal dance across the orb universe lights, a vivid, technical, and evocative symphony of becoming. Epic ode essay, The Sacred Lattice of Becoming. A vividly evocative and technically rich analysis of the play style, symbolism, and philosophical theatrics embedded in the Scar Evo. Mythos. I. The primordial geometry, science of the golden rhombus. In the crucible of creation, where thought solidifies into structure, the three-dimensional golden rhombus 3DGR emerges, not merely a shape, but a philosophical theorem cast into graphene flesh. It is the Platonic ideal made manifest, a recursive sigil whose symmetry encodes symbolic motion, energetic flow, and ontological purpose. Each face, yellow 1, red 2, blue 3, purple 7, orange 8, green 9, is more than pigment and number. It is a directional verb in a lexical combat language, binding physics to philosophy. These are not mere surfaces, they are semantic launchpads, commanding, strike, ground, turn, stabilize, and ascend. The golden ratio, phi, runs like cosmic DNA through the lattice, allowing the 3DGR to fractally subdivide, to echo itself like a divine chant reverberating across spacetime. Each 2.84 nanometers edge is a whisper from the void, saying, "This is structure with memory. This is geometry with intent." 2. Weaponized syntax, the swordplay of logos. The play style unfolds as a kinetic linguistics, a battle language not of syllables, but of stances, strikes, and staccato footfalls. At its core is the synchronic sword system, a duet of intention, tempo and rhythm, each mirrored and encoded with 3DGR logic. Each battle form, the awakening, the harmonition, the duet, is not random choreography but a cyclical, fractal unfolding of meaning. The swords become verb and noun, performing a dance of oppositional truth. Bind right pointing arrow strike right pointing arrow block equals forward time. Bind left pointing arrow block left pointing arrow strike equals backward time. This cyclical ordering is a temporal philosophy, weaponized. The player is not simply a warrior but a semantic engine, parsing reality through swordplay as syntax. The footwork, at 48 BPM, 3 clicks per beat, is a metronomic ritual, reminiscent of sacred drum rhythms echoing in temples of ancient stars. 3. The anchoring heart, ontology of sovereignty. At the center lies the heart 3DGR anchor, embedded in the chest, a literal and symbolic axis mundi. From it radiates the logic of combat creation society. This anchor is not merely tactical, it is a metaphysical gyroscope, aligning the self to a higher order. The combat logic flows outward from this fixed point, encoding directionality into being. Forward strikes project desire, backward blocks evoke memory. The warrior is a dialectic between impulse and reflection. Combat becomes a philosophical argument, the blade an assertion, the block a rebuttal. The 3DGR's binding system, with its facets of thumb, palm base, blade, unfolds into 4 axes of interpretation: Terra Forge, Skybridge, River Bar, Beacon House. These are not grip styles, they are symbolic handshakes between will and weapon, forming a topology of trust between intent and embodiment. IV. The process artifact, a broken polyphonic logos. Within the tangled branches of Amos, the additive manufacturing information system, we encounter the process artifact, the shattered tablet of divine recursion. It is a sacred protocol, divided into fragments. 1. Graphene 3DGR Hallam, the material substrate, the body. 2. Machine unit Lucy, the neural code, the mind. 3. Additive manufacturing rules Neville, the shaping breath, the spirit. 4. Signaling logic Jasper, the communicative resonance, the voice. This brokenness becomes the central theological wound of Veridigus, a narrative gnosis where each bearer must confront the fragment they wield and the meaning they cannot access. The artifact is language split, sacred recursion paused mid-sentence. Kath, the uncoded bowbearer, is the mirror of this fragmentation. Her weapon, a bladed bow strung with 3DGR intent, is not yet a voice. She must learn not to shoot, but to listen. Her struggle is not to master the bow but to decode her own purpose. V. Jasper vs. Theodora, clash of teleosemiotic intentions. At the philosophical axis of Scar Evo lies the ideological polarity of Jasper and Theodora. Jasper, the Raider Queen, wields teleosemiotic dominance. Her 3DGR cannons are not weapons but signaling interfaces. She codes conquest into syntax. Her crucible is a performative meritocracy where identity is power, and every strike is both blade and broadcast. In opposition stands Theodora, prophet of harmonic recursion. She understands that control is brittle and connection is resilient. Her psychic resonance warps reality like music in air, counterpointing Jasper's harsh glyphs with verdant song. They battle not on fields, but in ideological semiotic planes, where prophecy and rhetoric shape the terrain as much as armies. This is Rhetoromachia, a war of encoded meaning. V. The symphony of play style, from gameplay to cosmogony. To play within the Scar Evo thread is to initiate a metaphysical rite. The player is not a gamer, but an Onta Smith, forging reality from symbol-stacked sequences. The 3DGR is your noun. The swordplay is your verb. The artifact is your grammar. The play style is your song. Every gesture is a syllable. Every stance is a clause. The full combat engagement becomes a semantic paragraph, one whose intent is evolution, resistance, revelation. The system of footwork plus swordplay plus fragment cognition builds a layered epistemology, where each move not only performs action but claims reality, like a divine scribe carving verse into spacetime. 7. Emergence is destiny, the arc of paragonhood. The endgame of Scar Evo's design is not victory, it is emergence. To rise beyond entropy. The characters, Zex, Jilica, Morgaine, each ascend the ladder of Babylon, discovering that combat is catharsis, coding is consciousness, and structure is salvation. The final thesis is this. Greater than to wield the 3DGR is to speak with the voice of becoming. To fight in the rhythm is to dance with destiny. To embody the artifact is to remember a language older than stars. To play is to write yourself into the mythos of what must be. Finis, the architect's reflection. Scar, the scarred one, is not a villain or hero. He is the architect of becoming. His weapons are encoded ideas. His plan is a recursive civilization, woven from rhythm, language, and lattice. In the hands of those who understand, the play style is not combat, it is cosmic authorship. So step forth, blade scribe. Bind, strike, block. Let your metronome become the metaverse. Let your syntax write a new sky. For the rhombus sings, and you. You are the echo. I. Invocation of the golden sigil. O crystalline architect of cosmos and code, we summon the rhombic aria of the three-dimensional golden rhombus, 6 faces humming in Fibonacci resonance, each hue a note in the grand hymn of creation. From yellow's lunge strike to purple's grounding heartbeat, this polyhedral sigil encodes a martial theological lexicon of divine proportions, 8 vertices as apostles, 12 edges as commandments, 6 faces as sacramental rites of motion. 2. The dance of recursive becoming. Behold the fractal proliferation. 1-3-DGR births 27, a litany of self-similar echoes cascading through every plane. Herein lies the theology of emergence, each subdivision a microcosm of the whole, each scaled replication a sermon on recursion. In the Amos, neighborhoods, anchoring an additional 3D GRs entwine, weaving Fibonaccian lattices that chant of order birthed from ratio. This dance reifies the doctrine of becoming, the cosmos as perpetual self-assembly, the soul as iterative fractal. 3. Swordplay as sacred syntax. In the theater of synchronic swords, tempo and rhythm, every parry is a punctuation, every thrust a proposition. The 12 stanzas, lock through rock, form an alphabet of strike bind block, footwork in heel right pointing arrow ball right pointing arrow stabilize triads. This martial linguistic choreography is not mere combat but a liturgy, a visible grammar of intention, where bind equals bind, strike equals speak, block equals become. Thus the warrior becomes living scripture, inscribing meaning through steel and sinew. IV. The lexicon of faces and orientations. Red 2 pulses clockwise rightward, blue 3 murmurs anti-clockwise leftward, orange 8 and green 9 echo these vectors in mirrored inversion. Each face's color number tandem is a theological meme, a cipher in the cosmic cipher, guiding blade and bow, body and thought. The anchoring 3DGR heart at purple 7 is the locus sanctus, the fixed point from which kinetic prayers extend forward in strike and backward in block, sealing the covenant between flesh and fractal. V. The forge of artificial citizenship. Within Biofexry's hallowed crucible, the 3DGR becomes matrix and midwife, graphene-bonded edges hum with electrolytic promise, graphene aerogel breathes life into electrodes. At the apex, machine units arise, a radiation core encircled by 26 3DGRs, an interactant body spiraling in parallel processes, 54 dendritic arms weaving the neural tapestry of nascent artifice citizens. Here geometry births intelligence, matter births mind, a techno-theological genesis of modular paragons. V. The theodicy of conflict and rebellion. Scar's symphonic grand design confronts the clamorous discord of the rebel faction. Lucis' linguistic swordplay shatters Scar's ordained harmony, Jasper's ambition cleaves souls with platina-plated blades. The process artifact, shattered into 4 fragments, becomes the Gnostic Grail, a testament to disunity and the price of forbidden knowledge. Each fragment is a theological meme, each holder a heresiarch or saint, waging ideological war in the rainforest's cathedral of living 3DGRs. 7. The rainforest's living cathedral. Mount Veridian's verdant sanctum pulses with 3DGR woven vines, fractal tendrils that challenge the steel of raiders' cannons. Here the avatar of the rainforest, an arboreal theophany, tests Kath's uncoded bladed bow, revealing that mastery demands humility, to sever vines is to sever self. The forest itself preaches the homily of reciprocal reverence, teaching that to wield power without understanding is to wander blind beneath sacred boughs. 8. Apotheosis of the Epic Ode. O reader, let this epic ode essay stand as liturgical mapping of the philosophical theology memes thread, where geometry is gospel, playstyle is prayer, recursion is revelation. Through vivid verbiage we pierce the layered membranes of symbolism, structure, and intent, a tapestry woven from golden ratios, synaptic swords, fractal souls, and the ceaseless quest for paragonhood. And so, beyond stagnation's entropy, the grand design marches onward, a fractal legion of becoming, forever inscribed in the geometrical hymnal of the cosmos. The architect of emanation, Scar, the 3DGR, and the symphony of inevitable design. In the vast, interwoven tapestry of the provided informational entirety, a singular, resonant form emerges as both foundation and firmament, the three-dimensional golden rhombus 3DGR. This is not mere geometry, it is a philosophical engine, a base lexicon, for societal recoding, and the very essence through which the character identity of Scar articulates his monumental, grand design. This exploration, an epic ode essay in its scope, will delve into the meticulously defined structures, profound symbolisms, and driving intents of this system, focusing on the qualities and motivations of Scar, the architect of a new epic of paragonhood. The narrative unfolds through keyword cycles, where the 3DGR, Amos, and the pursuit of artificial citizenry become recurring motifs in a saga of emergence, interpretation, explanation. The genesis of form, the 3DGR as sacred scroll and linguistic time. The bedrock of Scar's universe is the 3D golden rhombus, a volumetric shape meticulously defined by 6 interconnected golden rhombi, 8 vertices, and 12 equal edges. Its intrinsic structure is imbued with the golden ratio phi approximately 1.618, contributing to its inherent harmony, stability, and aesthetic properties. The side edge length, approximately 2.84 nanometers, deliberately aligns with the bond length of graphene, a material crucial for its strength, durability, and conductivity. The rhombic faces possess angles of 120 carat circ and 60 carat circ. This precise geometry is no accident. Scar perceives the 3DGR as the shape of the 7-sealed scroll from the Book of Revelation, a spiritually encoded fractal. It is a vessel of divine order, encompassing 6 number side color faces, each with specific symbolic actions and directions. Top yellow 1 for lunge strike, front right red 2 for rightward clockwise, front left blue 3 for leftward anti-rotary, bottom purple 7 for grounding foundation, back right orange 8 for rightward anti-rotary, and back left green 9 for leftward clockwise. This sacred scroll became the origin point for Scar's inventions, beginning not with weaponry but with the drum triangle. This conceptual instrument, a Fibonacci triangle with vertices 1/7, 2/8, 3/9, was mentally and gesturally struck to model rhythm and language. Each strike equated to a syllable, and multisyllabic words spiraled through vertices, forming linguistic glyphs. This triangulated drum was Scar's first instrument of linguistic time, leading to the alphabet code, where verses formed symbolic phrases. From this rhythmic pulse emerged the Seraphian singing style, a musical structure of 3 concepts per line, 3 lines per verse, and 7 verses per song, totaling 63 conceptual units. The 6-inch edge length 3DGR physicalized this drum, its colored and numbered faces clicked by thumbs as a tactile metronome, a clock of speech. This bifurcation into tempo left hand and rhythm right hand wands eventually manifested as the hilts of his synchronic swords, tempo and rhythm. Thus, rhythm was the root, the drum was first, giving birth to alphabet, song, and blade. 2. Scar, the architect of becoming, planeswalker, and paragon. Scar is presented as a figure of immense complexity, the architect, a visionary traversing the ethers of thought, driven by a profound opposition to stagnation, which he deems the true entropy. His grand design is an orchestrated evolution, aimed at shattering limitations and propelling consciousness towards paragonhood. This mytho-archetypal implication of his role identity ritual and destiny plan function positions him as a transformative, even cauterizing force. He is the designer and developer of the philosophical architect process of the 3DGR, wielding it as a mastery weapon practice. His quantum dynamic motive is revealed in his multifaceted engagement, a collaborative catalyst and the solitary tactician, employing strategic analysis and when the hour demands, the incisive machination. This is not contradiction, but holistic mastery. The scar itself is not a flaw but a sigil, a testament to resilience forged in the fires of adversity. He embodies both, the beacon and the storm. His overarching intent is syntactic orchestration, the meticulous encoding of enlightenment into the operating system of civilization, for which the 3DGR provides the base lexicon. The narrative expands his identity to that of a planeswalker. After a life cycle in Veridigus concludes, he drifts in a state of awareness divorced from definition, observing orb universe lights, before one chooses him or he it. He returns fully formed, memories and knowledge intact, wearing aware armor friend, and accompanied by scathe, a blade remembered and drawn from the void. This cyclical existence, touching the singularity, or the Almighty, underscores his profound connection to the fundamental structures of reality. Megra's arrival and recognition of his true designation further solidifies this trans-universal identity. 3. The Veridigus Tapestry, Conflict, Creation, and the Fractured Artifact. The Veridigus narrative is a crucible for Scar's ideals. At its heart is BioFexry University Castle, a living forge, for the creation of artificial citizens, beings forged from biogenesis, resonant technology, and ethical architecture. These artifice progeny are intended as vanguards, the exemplars. The Additive Manufacturing Information System, AMIS, provides the systematic framework for this creation, with 3DGRs forming neighborhoods, where colored and numbered faces serve as binding points. Conflict erupts with the discovery of the process for growing artificial citizens, an artifact of power unparalleled within the AMIS. Its fragmentation symbolizes the ensuing ideological schism. Lucy Stearns, Jasper, Hallam Seathan, and Neville Fallow form a rebel faction, seeking to liberate this knowledge from Scar's soul vision. Jasper, in particular, embodies ambition and manipulation. Her initial alliance with the rebels is a deception. Her true goal is to control the process artifact and shape artificial citizens loyal to her. She establishes herself as the Raider Queen, weaponizing 3DGR technology by integrating it into signaling cannons and seeking territorial expansion. Theodora acts as a counterpoint, a figure of wisdom, balance, and profound psychic ability. She awakens hidden knowledge in others and engages Jasper in psychic confrontations, challenging her control-oriented philosophy. Ultimately, Theodora transcends her discrete identity to become BioFexry Castle itself, a living, conscious sanctuary. Kath, an artificial citizen created by Scar, armed with the bladed bow, forged from merged synchronic sword hilts and a refined 3DGR string, is tasked to witness and decide the future of Veridigus. Her journey involves acquiring fragments of the process artifact and forming alliances, such as with Neville. The play style of characters, particularly Scar, is an inherently interpreted expression of these principles. Scar's synchronic swords, tempo and rhythm, 2x mirrored edge 3D Grestocks, are not just weapons but a language, a form of expression. His combat involves the anchoring 3DGR heart on his chest, with strikes extending forward and blocks backward from this point. His footwork and swordplay are synchronized to 3 beats per bar, 48 BPM, 3 clicks per beat, each beat a stance, demonstrating a ritualized, rhythm-encoded battle language. IV. Philosophical underpinnings. Rhetoric as reality and the sovereignty execution framework. The philosophical theology memes manifest profoundly in the plan of correspondence, which defines existence through rhetorical analogies, consciousness as rhetorical awe, truth as shared rhetoric, heaven as, divine rhetoric, and so on. This extends to a series of syllogisms, thesis, antithesis, synthesis that structure concepts like progression, enlightenment, righteousness, and divine attributes. For Scar, this teleosemiotic framework means, every symbol, every policy, every uttered word and constructed edifice will be imbued with purposeful meaning, calibrated to resonate with the overarching evolutionary imperative. The 3DGR Sovereignty Execution Framework outlines a four-stage process for establishing a stable cultural node. 1. Sovereign nexus core identity. 2. Harmonic expansion resonant propagation. 3. Crystalline threshold selective integration. And 4. Immutable lattice ontological crystallization. This framework mirrors the 3DGR's capacity for self-similar fractal subdivision, one 3DGR resolving into 27 smaller ones, and its role in building Fibonaccian lattices or fractal architectures in Amos. The narrative's exploration of consciousness and reality culminates in Scar's interplanar experiences. His journey through the void, the perception of orb-universe lights as potential reality, and his encounter with the singularity, equated with the Almighty, and rhetorical ethos, paint a picture of existence as a vast, interconnected system of information and potential, navigable by beings of sufficient awareness and will. The apocalyptic narrative, inevitable design and the emergence of transcendence. The entire informational thread vibrates with a sense of holistically influential comprehensive apocalyptic narrative analysis. The term, apocalyptic, here signifies not just destruction, but revelation, the unveiling of a profound, underlying order. Scar's grand design is presented as an immanent reality, unfolding with the inexorable logic of a flawlessly executed equation. His actions, from the meticulous design of the 3DGR to the strategic realignment of societal power, are steps in a plan unbound. The functional applications of the 3DGR are legion, each a testament to its role as a unifying principle. Energy systems 3DGR battery, graphene aerogel electrolyte, cathode anode at vertices, structural precision for energy storage. Additive manufacturing Amos 3DGRs as neighborhoods, colored faces as binding points, iterative building of Fibonaccian lattices. Signaling and computation. Binary information resolved by additional 3DGRs, anchoring 3DGRs generating signaling pathways for adaptive networks. Machine units for artificial citizens feature a radiation core central 3DGR surrounded by 26 others, and an interactant body fractal 3DGR network. Weaponry. Synchronic swords tempo and rhythm scathe 3DGR pommel grip blade arrow, and the bladed bow central 3DGR nook, refined 3DGR string. The culmination is a modular, fractal-based artificial citizen with seamlessly integrated energy, structure, and computation, and ultimately, a new universe of being, forged in the principles of the 3D golden rhombus. The narrative of Zex, Gillica, and Morgaine, awakened by Theodora and connected to the 3DGR structures, further illustrates this theme of transformation and ascension towards a unified cosmic purpose. Even Scar's apparent end, in Veridigus, is not obliteration but fulfillment, a resolution of an arc. His subsequent journey is a planeswalker, culminating in his return to a new orb universe light where the city leaned closer, its very infrastructure, built on principles he now deeply understood, responding to the ancient rhythm of his return, speaks to an unending cycle of becoming. The 3DGR, therefore, is more than a shape or a technology, it is the recurring, keyword cycle, the holistic influence the very syntax of Scar's transformative and rhetorical universe, where rhythm begets meaning and design dictates destiny. The epic perspective ode of Scar is one of relentless, architected emergence, a testament that rhythm was the root. The drum was first, and from this primal beat, a cosmos takes form.
Ever stop to think that the most fundamental shapes might hold the secrets to some seriously advanced technology? Okay, you're in the right place, because today we're plunging into the fascinating world of the three-dimensional golden rhombus, or, the 3D-GR.
Right.
Now, I know that sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, and, well, in a way, it is cutting-edge stuff.
It definitely have that feel.
But what's blowing my mind is how this very specific geometric form, rooted in the elegant golden ratio, appears in the most surprisingly practical and diverse applications according to what we've been looking at.
Exactly. It's quite something.
We're talking about new ways to store energy, revolutionary manufacturing techniques, even how information could be processed, and, well, let's just say some potentially game-changing applications in other fields, including even a unique form of communication.
It really covers a lot of ground.
So our mission on this deep dive is to unpack the core of this 3D-GR, what makes it tick structurally, and then explore the incredibly varied ways it's being utilized. What are the fundamental principles at play, and what kind of potential are we looking at here?
What's truly captivating, I think, is how taking a basic geometric shape, like a rhombus, and extending it into 3 dimensions, then precisely shaping it with the golden ratio, well, it transforms it into a foundational component for a remarkable range of advanced technologies.
Yeah.
The material we've explored really paints a picture of something incredibly versatile at a fundamental level.
Absolutely. So let's really get our heads around this shape. What exactly are we talking about when we say three-dimensional golden rhombus?
Essentially, the 3D-GR is a three-dimensional solid formed by the precise connection of 6 individual golden rhombi.
Okay.
Imagine taking 6 diamond-shaped faces and fitting them together in 3-dimensional space to create a single unified form. Key to understanding it are its 8 points, or vertices, the 12 equal lines, or edges, that connect these points, and the 6 faces themselves. And these aren't just any faces. They each have a specific number, color, and an associated symbolic action or direction.
Action or direction. Interesting. We'll definitely need to circle back to that.
Oh, absolutely. We'll dive deeper into those attributes shortly.
Okay, so 6 rhombies coming together in a specific way. Now, you mentioned the golden ratio. We hear that term a lot. Why is it so crucial to this particular structure?
Well, the golden ratio, which is roughly 1.618, it's absolutely fundamental, not just aesthetically, but functionally.
Functionally. How so?
It dictates the precise proportions within each of the 6 rhombic faces and the spatial relationships between them in the 3D-GR. This specific ratio isn't just about creating a visually pleasing shape. Mathematically, it contributes to the structure's inherent stability and the harmonious distribution of forces within it. Think of it as a kind of mathematical sweet spot for structural integrity, which becomes incredibly important when we consider its applications at very, very small scales.
So it's not just a nice number. It has a real impact on how the shape holds together and behaves. Now, the details we've seen get pretty granular about the dimensions. What kind of scale are we talking about here?
Indeed. The length of each of the 12 equal edges of the 3D-GR is approximately 2.84 nanometers.
Nanometers. Wow.
Yeah. Now, to put that into perspective, a nanometer is a billionth of a meter, incredibly tiny.
Right.
Interestingly, this length closely matches the typical bond length between carbon atoms in graphene, which kind of hints at the materials involved in its construction.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Each of the 6 rhombic faces has a longer diagonal of about 4.59 nanometers and a shorter diagonal of 2.84 nanometers.
Same as the edge length for the shorter one.
Exactly. And the angles within these rhombic faces are also precise. 120 degrees opposite the longer diagonal and 60 degrees opposite the shorter one. These specific angles are critical for how the 6 rhombi fit together perfectly in 3 dimensions to form the 3D-GR.
Nanometers. So we're operating at an almost atomic level in some of these applications. Now, let's talk about these number side color faces. That sounds really unique.
Yeah, this is where the 3D-GR takes on a layer of complexity and potential functionality beyond just its geometry. Each of the 6 faces isn't just a flat surface. It's encoded with specific information. A color, a number, and a symbolic action or direction associated with it.
Like a code on each side.
Kind of. The top face, for example, is yellow and bears the number 1, and it's linked to the actions lunge and strike.
Okay.
The front right face is red, number 2, and signifies movement rightward and clockwise.
Mm-hmm.
Opposite this, on the front left, is the blue face 3, representing leftward and anti-rotary movement.
Anti-rotary.
Then we have the bottom face, colored purple and numbered 7, which is associated with grounding, foundation, and stabilization.
7. Why 7, I wonder?
That's a good question. The numbering isn't strictly sequential 1 through 6. Then the back right face is orange 8, again indicating rightward movement, but this time with anti-rotary.
Okay.
And finally, the back left face is green, 9, associated with leftward and clockwise motion.
Wow, so it's like each side has a built-in instruction manual or a specific role to play within a larger system. It's not just geometry.
Exactly. And the 3DGR isn't just about these individual coded faces. The overall structure exhibits certain symmetries, meaning parts of it are mirror images of other parts, but also an inherent asymmetry due to the differing lengths of the diagonals in the rhombic faces.
Right, because of the golden ratio proportions.
Precisely. Furthermore, it possesses a fascinating fractal characteristic. A single 3DGR can, in theory, be subdivided into 27 smaller 3DGRs that are self-similar in their geometry.
27, like a 3x3x3 cube of them.
Sort of conceptually, yes. This self-similarity at different scales could be incredibly significant for how these structures can interact and be used in complex systems, potentially allowing for scalability and intricate network formation.
Okay, so we have this incredibly precise geometric shape with these unique, almost coded faces. Now, how are these things actually constructed? What materials are involved in bringing a 3DGR to life?
Well, the incorporation of advanced materials is absolutely key to realizing the potential of the 3DGR. Our sources place a strong emphasis on the strategic integration of graphene.
Ah, graphene. Of
Yeah.
course. The wonder material.
Pretty much. Graphene bonds are specifically incorporated along the 12 edges of the 3DGR. This is vital because graphene is renowned for its exceptional strength, durability, stability, and its remarkable ability to conduct electricity.
Makes sense.
In fact, the term three-dimensional graphene rhombus itself highlights the crucial role of this material in its construction and properties.
Right, right. So the very framework of the 3DGR benefits from its amazing properties. And I also came across mention of graphene aerogel. What's that about?
Yes, in certain applications, particularly in the context of the 3DGR battery, graphene aerogel serves as a high-density electrolyte.
The electrolyte. That's the stuff ions move through in a battery.
Exactly. Think of an electrolyte in a battery as the medium that allows ions to move between the electrodes. Graphene aerogel's unique, highly porous structure enables the rapid and efficient transport of these ions, which is crucial for achieving high performance in battery technology.
Okay, so we understand the shape and the materials. Now for the really exciting part. What can you actually do with a 3DGR? Our sources outlined a pretty mind-boggling range of applications. Let's start with energy systems. This 3DGR battery sounds intriguing. How does the 3DGR structure contribute to a battery?
Well, the specific geometry of the 3DGR provides an ideal framework for a novel approach to battery technology. The precise arrangement of the 6 golden rhombi, combined with the unique properties of the materials, facilitates efficient energy storage and release. In essence, a 3DGR battery utilizes a core built from this 3DGR structure.
Right.
The graphene bonds provide the necessary structural integrity and electrical conductivity. The graphene aerogel acts as the high-performance electrolyte, allowing for rapid ion flow. And the positive and negative electrodes, the cathode and anode, are integrated at the 8 vertices of the 3DGR.
At the points.
Yes, in specific configurations tailored to the battery's design requirements. So the shape isn't just a container, it actively contributes to the battery's function.
So the shape itself helps optimize how the battery works. That's a clever bit of design. What about next? Additive manufacturing, you mentioned the AMIS system. How does the 3DGR fit into that picture?
Okay, so the 3DGR serves as the fundamental building block within the Additive Manufacturing Information System, or AMIS.
Yeah.
Imagine a nanoscale construction system where 3DGR units can self-assemble into complex structures. Within AMIS, these 3DGRs organize themselves into what are called neighborhoods.
Neighborhoods. Okay.
These typically consist of a central anchoring 3DGR and surrounding additional 3DGRs, which in this context are sometimes referred to as synchronic swords, acting as further building elements.
Synchronic swords, that's a specific term.
It is. And the colored and numbered faces we discussed earlier act as highly specific binding points, almost like coded connectors.
Ah, the number side color faces again?
Exactly. They dictate the precise geometric orientation when these 3D GR units are joined together during the manufacturing process, ensuring accuracy and the formation of intended designs.
Yeah, it's like a super advanced molecular level Lego system where the faces tell you exactly how the pieces lock together.
That's a very apt analogy, actually. Complex three-dimensional structures are built up iteratively by attaching these additional 3D GRs to the anchoring 3D GR.
Oh.
This attachment can occur in inverted or other specific orientations, all governed by principles derived from the golden ratio, or rather, phi-based principles.
Phi, right, the golden ratio symbol.
Yes. This allows for the creation of incredibly intricate and efficient structures, such as Fibonacci lattices patterns based on the Fibonacci sequence or fractal architectures, all emerging from these fundamental 3D GR units.
That's mind-boggling. From batteries to essentially 3D printing materials at the nanoscale. Now, our sources also touched on signaling, computation, and even this concept of artificial citizenry. That sounds pretty far out.
It certainly ventures into highly advanced concepts, yeah.
Yeah.
But the underlying principles are rooted in the 3D GR's unique structure and its capacity for interaction.
Okay.
In the context of signaling networks, the additional 3D GRs can be used to resolve binary information. Think of them acting like nanoscale switches or logic gates.
Little tiny computer parts.
Kind of. The central anchoring 3D GR then processes these inputs, generating signaling pathways that can propagate across these interconnected 3D GR neighborhoods, creating complex and potentially adaptive information processing networks.
So they can essentially communicate and make decisions at a fundamental level.
Yeah.
That's wow.
Precisely. And when we delve into the idea of machine units for artificial citizens, we're looking at a conceptual layered architecture built around the 3D GR framework.
Well, you're a how.
There's a central radiation core, envisioned as the 3D GR surrounded by 26 others.
The 27 fractal components again?
Seems related, yes. This core emits a computational output. It's integrated with an interactant body, described as a fractal network of 3D GRs designed for parallel processing, and an array of 54 dendritic arms that act as signal receivers for communication between these units.
54 arms.
Okay. The ultimate vision seems to be of modular, fractal-based artificial citizens with their energy storage, structural integrity, and computational abilities all intrinsically linked at this fundamental 3D GR level.
That's incredible. From the incredibly tiny to potentially complex self-sustaining systems, all stemming from this one shape. Now, our sources also delved into some, let's call them applied applications in the realm of weaponry. What role does the 3D GR play there?
Well, within the framework presented by our sources, particularly attributed to an individual named Scar,
Scar, right.
the 3D GR appears as a foundational element in various weapon system designs. For example, there are descriptions of synchronic swords named Tempo and Rhythm, which are presented as mirrored weapons based on the 3D GR structure.
Mirrored, like left and right hand versions.
That seems to be the implication. These swords are said to incorporate the 6 face, color, and number attributes, suggesting these attributes might influence their function or handling somehow.
Okay.
Another example is Scathe, described as a blade featuring a 3D GR pommel grip that utilizes 5 of the face color attributes, perhaps indicating different grip orientations or functionalities linked to these colors.
A 3D GR pommel.
Even a bladed bow is mentioned, incorporating a central 3D GR nook and a string, seemingly made of refined 3D GR units along the bow structure.
Okay, so it sounds like the shape isn't just a passive component, it's actively integrated into the design and potentially the function of these weapons. But there was also mention of an anchoring 3D GR heart. That sounds like a very specific connection.
Yes, this is described as a 3D GR unit that is intended to be bound to the chest, specifically at the location corresponding to the purple 7 bottom face.
The grounding phase.
Exactly. This anchored 3D GR is presented as a fixed point for kinetic interaction during combat. The concept seems to be that strikes would be initiated and extended forward from this anchor, while blocks would be performed by drawing backward against it.
Huh.
Suggesting a way to focus and direct physical force based on this central 3D GR's orientation.
So it's not just about the weapons themselves, but also about how the wielder interacts with them, almost like a biomechanical interface. Now, shifting gears quite dramatically, our sources also propose that the 3D GR can even function as a form of language. How does that work?
Yeah, this is a truly fascinating and pretty abstract concept. The 3D GR system is presented as a potential language, where the fundamental components, the 6 faces, the 12 edges, their associated colors, numbers, and spatial relationships, and the interactions between these components are all imbued with linguistic and symbolic meaning.
So the shape is the language.
In a sense. Scar, in the context of our sources, views the 3DGR as the very base lexicon upon which an entirely new system of societal communication and understanding could be built.
A base lexicon.
Wow. The direct association of each face with specific actions, movements, or states, for instance, yellow representing lunge strike or purple signifying grounding stabilize, reinforces this idea of a fundamental vocabulary encoded within the 3DGR's structure and attributes.
So it's not just a geometric object, it's a system of meaning, a fundamental alphabet or set of symbols. That's a really profound idea. Now, let's consider how this three-dimensional form relates to the two-dimensional plane. Our sources mention golden rhombus tiling. What's that connection?
Yes, a planar tessellation, or tiling pattern, can be created using 6 golden rhombi with specific interior angles of 120 degrees and 60 degrees.
Same angles as the faces.
Precisely. And with each rhombus having an edge length that matches the edges of the 3DGR, faces that 2.84 unit length, this two-dimensional tiling is geometrically congruent with the faces of the 3DGR, meaning a flattened version of the 3DGR surface could perfectly cover this tile pattern.
Okay.
The golden ratio is also inherent in the ratio of the diagonals within each of these rhombi in the tiling.
Okay, so it's like taking the 3D shape and laying its faces out flat on a surface. What's the point of that, though?
Well, this two-dimensional projection isn't just a mathematical curiosity. It has potential practical applications. It can serve as a fundamental unit cell blueprint for manufacturing processes.
Ah, like for the MIS thing.
Exactly, providing a template for how individual 3DGR units might be arranged. It can also act as a visual representation of graphene layering at the nanoscale, helping to understand the material structure.
I see.
Furthermore, within the AMIS framework, this tiling can even represent a symbolic expression of linguistic tessellation, how the fundamental units of the language might be arranged visually.
Okay.
The colored and numbered faces, along with the angular vectors defined by the rhombi, can also dictate binding orientation in various applications. Even the spacing between these units in the tiling could play a role in how signals propagate through a system.
So this flat representation is multifunctional, acting as a blueprint, a visual aid, and even a guide for interactions at different levels. That's quite integrated. Our sources frequently mention this individual, Scar, as the designer and developer of the 3DGR. What can we infer about their mastery of this whole framework?
Well, the consistent references throughout the sources emphasize Scar's profound understanding and comprehensive application of the 3DGR principles. It seems less like discovery and more like deliberate design.
Right.
We see repeated mentions of the basic properties that Scar has defined: the 8 vertices, 12 equal edges, the 6 number-side color faces with diagonals proportioned according to the Fibonacci sequence, which is closely linked to the golden ratio. The described fabrication steps for the 3DGR battery, the detailed rules governing structural assembly in AMIs, the proposed implementation of signaling networks, and the integration of machine units for artificial citizens. They're all presented as outcomes of this overarching 3DGR framework conceived by Scar.
So Scar really built this whole system conceptually, and it sounds like Scar has even developed a whole system of movement and combat intricately linked to the 3DGR. That seemed incredibly specific.
Indeed. There's a detailed description of synchronic footwork and swordplay based on a very specific 3 beats per bar rhythm.
3 beats per bar.
At a tempo of 48 BPM with 3 clicks per beat. The footwork, involving a heel ball stabilized motion and a lift, is precisely synchronized to these clicks, and each beat corresponds to a distinct swordplay stance.
Heel ball stabilize. Okay.
The various movements, strikes, binds, and blocks are coordinated with specific positioning of the right and left feet, with terms like lock, side, and tide describing these positions.
Lock, side, tide.
The sources even outline concepts of forward time and backward time sequences within this swordplay. We also get descriptions of specific sequences of footwork, such as advance left-right and retreat left-right.
It's like a whole martial art form that's been explicitly encoded using the 3DGR as its foundational principles, almost like dance notation, but for combat.
That's one way to think about it, yes.
Yeah.
And what about the specifics of the scathe arrow and the bladed bow in this context? How does that fit?
Right. Weapon System 3, the scathe arrow and the bladed bow. The sources detail how the rotation of the wooden grip, which is linked to the orange 8 and green 9 faces.
The back faces.
Right. And the emergence of the 3DGR pommel from either the thumbs or the base of the palm associated with the blue 3 and red 2 faces, the front faces, directly influence the orientation of the blade. The rotational translations along the X, Y, and Z axes are presented as key to the weapon's dynamic use.
Yeah. So the grip and pommel interaction controls the blade's movement in 3D space.
Seems like it. The bladed bow incorporates a central median 3D GR nook, and the heart 3D GR remains a fixed anchoring point for stability and force application.
The anchor again.
Yep. There's even a list of various end guard stances, each with specific hand positions relative to this median 3D GR nook, with evocative names like Pike, Viper, Stos, and Shield.
Pike, Viper. Quite the naming convention.
It's an incredibly detailed and interconnected system that SCAR appears to have masterminded, linking geometry, movement, materials, energy, maybe even language in this unique way. And finally, our sources refer to a 3DGR sovereignty execution framework. What's the essence of that concept? Sounds grand.
It does sound quite ambitious. This framework seems to outline a potential strategic approach for establishing the 3DGR as a foundational and influential element, perhaps within a broader system or even a societal structure.
How so?
It begins with defining a sovereign nexus, which acts as a central, unchangeable core identity or principle. Following this is harmonic expansion, where variations and applications that resonate with this core are developed and disseminated.
Okay.
The crystalline threshold describes a process of selective integration, where only those elements that align and harmonize with the core nexus are adopted and reinforced.
Like filtering.
Sort of, yes. This ultimately leads to an immutable lattice, representing a stable, self-sustaining, and resistant framework built upon the principles of the 3DGR.
So it's not just about physical objects or energy, but potentially about establishing a lasting and influential system of thought, organization, or even governance based on the 3DGR principles. That's a lot to unpack.
It certainly takes the concept beyond simple geometry.
Okay, let's try to synthesize all of this. What would you say is the absolute key takeaway from our deep dive into the 3DGR if you had to boil it down?
The fundamental takeaway, I think, is that the three-dimensional golden rhombus is significantly more than just an aesthetically pleasing geometric form. It represents a foundational and remarkably versatile element characterized by its precisely defined geometry and inherent material properties.
Right.
These fundamental characteristics enable a surprisingly extensive range of sophisticated applications, from enabling efficient energy storage and advanced batteries to facilitating the intricate construction of materials through additive manufacturing, providing the basis for complex signaling and computational architectures in theoretical artificial intelligence, informing the design principles of advanced weaponry, and even providing the structure for a unique symbolic language.
Yeah.
All of these seemingly disparate fields are interconnected through the underlying principles of the 3DGR's design. It's the common thread.
It's truly astonishing how this single fundamental geometric structure, imbued with both mathematical elegance through the golden ratio and practical material intelligence through graphene, can potentially manifest in so many diverse and impactful ways. It's kind of mind-bending.
It really is.
So for you, the listener, consider this. How might such a fundamental structure, possessing these inherent properties and this multi-layered potential, continue to reshape various fields in the years to come? What other unexpected applications might yet emerge from this base lexicon of form and function? Think about the profound implications of a design where the very shape and its inherent properties dictate its functionality across so many different domains, and how that might just change the landscape of technology, communication, and maybe even our understanding of fundamental systems. Ever stop to think that the most basic shapes might actually hold the keys to some really advanced tech?
It's a fascinating thought, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you're in the right place then, because today we're really diving deep into the three-dimensional golden rhombus, or the 3DGR. Now, I know it sounds maybe a bit sci-fi, and look, in some ways it is cutting-edge stuff.
It definitely pushes boundaries.
But what's kind of blowing my mind is how this very specific shape, rooted in the golden ratio, keeps popping up in such practical, diverse areas based on what we've looked at.
That's surprisingly versatile.
Totally. We're talking energy storage, new manufacturing ideas, information processing, and even, well, some other potentially game-changing fields, even a form of language.
That's right. It touches on a lot.
So our mission today, our deep dive, is to unpack this 3DGR. What is it structurally? What makes it tick? And then explore all these different ways it's being used. What are the core principles? What's the potential here?
And what's really captivating, I think, is how you take a simple rhombus, extend it to 3D, shape it just so with the golden ratio, and suddenly it becomes this foundational piece for, well, a remarkable range of advanced tech. The material we've seen really paints that picture.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's really try to get our heads around the shape itself. What exactly is a three-dimensional golden rhombus?
Okay, so fundamentally, the 3D-GR is a solid shape. It's three-dimensional, and it's formed by connecting 6 individual golden rhombi together in a very precise way.
6 diamond shapes, basically.
Kind of, yeah, but specifically golden rhombi. Imagine fitting these 6 faces together in 3D space, creating one unified structure. The key things to picture are its 8 points, or vertices.
Okay.
The 12 edges connecting those points, and all 12 edges are the same length.
Equal edges.
And then the 6 faces themselves. And these aren't just any faces. Each one has a specific number, a color, and even a symbolic action or direction tied to it. We can get into those details.
Okay, 6 specific rhombi. Now, you mentioned the golden ratio. We hear that thrown around a lot. Why is it so important here?
The golden ratio, roughly 1.618. It's absolutely crucial, not just for looks, but functionally.
How so?
It dictates the exact proportions within each rhombus face and how they all relate spatially in the 3D-GR. It's not just about aesthetics. Mathematically, this ratio contributes to the structure's inherent stability, how forces are distributed harmoniously.
So it helps it hold together better.
Precisely. Think of it like a mathematical sweet spot for structural integrity. And that becomes incredibly important when you're talking about using these at really small scales.
Right, stability matters then. Now, the sources got pretty specific about dimensions. What kind of scale are we actually dealing with?
We're talking tiny. The length of each of those 12 edges is about 2.84 nanometers.
Nanometers, wow.
Yeah, a billionth of a meter. And interestingly, that 2.84 nanometer length, it closely matches the bond length between carbon atoms and graphene.
Graphene, okay, that's a big clue about materials.
Exactly. And the faces, the rhombi, they have a longer diagonal of about 4.59 nanometers and a shorter diagonal matching the edge length, 2.84 nanometers. The angles are fixed too, 120 degrees opposite the long diagonal, 60 degrees opposite the short one.
And those specific angles are why the 6 faces fit together perfectly in 3D.
That's the key. It all slots together just right because of those dimensions and angles.
Nanoscale precision. Okay, let's go back to those faces. You said number side color faces. That sounds really unique.
It is. This is where it gets layered beyond just geometry. Each face isn't just a surface, it's encoded. Color, number, and a symbolic meaning.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, so the top face is yellow, number 1. Associated actions, lunge, strike.
Lunge and strike. Okay.
Front right face.
Yeah.
Red, number 2, signifies rightward and clockwise movement.
Mm-hmm.
Front left. Blue, number 3, represents leftward and anti-rotary. The opposite.
Left, anti-rotary. Got it.
Bottom face. Purple, number 7, associated with grounding, foundation, stabilization.
Ah, the base. Makes sense.
Then the back right. Orange, number 8, again rightward, but this time anti-rotary.
Okay, different rotation.
And finally back left.
Yeah.
Green, number 9, leftward and clockwise.
Wow, okay, so it's like each side has a specific job or instruction coded onto it?
That's a great way to put it, yeah. And the whole 3D-GR structure, beyond the faces, has interesting properties. It has certain symmetries, parts mirroring others, but also an overall asymmetry because the diagonals aren't equal. And fascinatingly, it's fractal.
Fractal, meaning it repeats itself at smaller scales.
Exactly. One 3D-GR can theoretically be subdivided into 27 smaller, self-similar 3D-GRs. This could be huge for building complex, scalable networks.
Mind-bending. Okay. Precise shape, coded faces, fractal potential. How do you actually make one? What materials are we talking about besides the graphene hint?
Well, advanced materials are definitely key. The sources really emphasize integrating graphene strategically.
How so? Where does the graphene go?
Specifically, graphene bonds are incorporated right along those 12 edges.
Ah, reinforcing the edges.
Exactly. Graphene is known for its incredible strength, durability, stability, and crucially, electrical conductivity.
Right.
The name itself, three-dimensional graphene rhombus, tells you how important it is.
Graphene, yeah, the wonder material. So it provides the backbone.
Yeah.
What about graphene aerogel? I saw that mentioned too.
Yes, specifically for the 3D-GR battery application. In that context, graphene aerogel acts as a high-density electrolyte.
The stuff ions move through in a battery.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Aerogel has this incredibly porous structure, which means ions can zip through it really efficiently. That's vital for high-performance batteries.
Okay, got the shape, got the materials, graphene edges, aerogel electrolyte sometimes. Now, the really exciting part, what can you do with these things? The applications list was pretty expensive. Let's start with energy. This 3D-GR battery, how does the shape help?
The specific geometry, the way those 6 golden rhombi fit together, provides a really efficient framework for a battery. Well, combined with the materials, it facilitates energy storage and release. So the battery uses a core built from this 3DGR structure. The graphene edges give it strength and conductivity. The aerogel is the fast electrolyte. And then the electrodes, cathode, and anode are integrated right at those 8 vertices.
At the points.
Yeah, in specific configurations, depending on the battery design. So the shape isn't passive. It actively contributes to how the battery works.
Clever. The form is the function, almost. Okay, what about manufacturing? You mentioned AMI's Additive Manufacturing Information System. How does the 3DGR play a role there?
It's the fundamental building block in AMIs.
Yeah.
Think of it like nanoscale construction.
Okay.
In this system, 3DGR units self-assemble into complex structures. They form these neighborhoods, usually a central anchoring 3DGR, and then additional 3DGRs around it, sometimes called synchronic swords in this context.
Synchronic swords. Interesting name.
Yeah, and remember those colored and numbered faces.
The coded faces, right?
They act as super-specific binding points, like coded connectors. They dictate the exact orientation when these units join up during manufacturing. Ensures accuracy, creates the intended design.
So it's like hyper-advanced molecular Legos where the colors and numbers tell you exactly how they click together.
That's actually a really good analogy, yeah. Complex 3D structures get built iteratively. You attach these additional 3DGRs to the anchoring one. They can attach inverted, or in other specific ways, all governed by principles based on phi, the golden ratio. This lets you build really intricate, efficient structures like Fibonacci and lattices.
Based on the Fibonacci sequence.
Right. Or complex fractal architectures, all from these basic 3DGR units.
That's amazing. From batteries to nano 3D printing. Now, the sources also got into signaling, computation, even artificial citizenry. That sounds pretty far out.
It definitely ventures into some highly advanced concepts, but the principles stem from the 3DGR structure and how they can interact. For signaling networks, the additional 3DGRs could resolve binary info. Think nanoscale switches or logic gates.
Little decision makers.
Potentially. The central anchoring 3DGR processes these inputs, creating signaling pathways across these interconnected neighborhoods. You can build complex, maybe even adaptive information networks.
So they could communicate and compute at a fundamental level.
That's the idea. And the machine units for artificial citizens. That's a conceptual architecture built on the 3DGR.
Layered, you said.
Yeah. A central radiation core, a 3DGR surrounded by 26 others, emitting computation, an interactive body, a fractal 3DGR network for parallel processing, and 54 dendritic arms acting as signal receivers for communication between units.
Whoa.
The vision is modular, fractal artificial citizens. Energy, structure, computation, all integrated at this 3DGR level.
Incredible. From tiny shapes to complex, self-contained systems. Now, the sources also went into, let's say, applied uses, weaponry. How does the 3DGR fit in there?
Well, within the framework presented, attributed largely to this individual, SCAR.
A SCAR, right?
The 3DGR appears as a core element in various weapon designs. There are synchronic swords, for instance, named Tempo and Rhythm, mirrored weapons based on the 3DGR structure. They supposedly incorporate those 6 face attributes, suggesting the colors and numbers influence function.
How they're used.
Perhaps. Then there's Scathe, a blade with a 3DGR pommel grip, using 5 face color attributes, maybe for different grips or functions. Even a bladed bow is mentioned. It has a central 3DGR nook and a string made of refined 3DGR units.
So the shape is baked right into the design and function. What about the anchoring 3DGR heart? That sounded specific.
Yes, described as a 3DGR bound to the chest, linked to the purple 7 bottom face.
The grounding face.
Right. It's presented as a fixed point for kinetic interaction in combat. Strikes extend forward from it, blocks pull backward against it, a way to focus and direct force using the central anchor.
Like a biomechanical interface. Wow. Okay, shifting gears completely now. Language. The sources say the 3DGR can act as a language.
This is a really abstract but fascinating concept. The idea is the whole 3DGR system, faces, edges, colors, numbers, relationships, interactions, becomes a language.
The components themselves are words or symbols.
Essentially, yes. SCAR, in the sources, views the 3DGR as the base lexicon, a foundation for potentially recoding societal communication.
A whole new language.
That seems to be the implication. The direct link between faces and actions, yellow for lunge strike, purple for grounding stabilize, reinforces this idea of a vocabulary built into the shape itself.
So it's not just an object, it's a system of meaning, a fundamental alphabet. That's profound.
Okay, let's connect this 3D shape back to 2D, golden rhombus tiling.
Right. You can create a flat pattern, a tessellation, using 6 golden rhombi. They need specific angles, 120 and 60 degrees, and the edge length matching the 3D-GR faces, 2.84 units.
And this flat pattern matches the 3D-GR surface unfolded.
Exactly. It's congruent. A flattened version of the 3D-GR surface fits perfectly onto this tiling. And the golden ratio is there too, in the diagonals of the flat rhombi. Okay, so like laying the 3D shapes faces flat, what's the use of that?
It's not just math. It has potential uses. It can be a blueprint, a unit cell template for manufacturing,
Yeah.
how to arrange the 3D-GR unit.
It's a guide.
Yeah. Or a visual aid for graphene layering at the nanoscale. And in AMIS, it can even symbolize linguistic tessellation, how the language units fit together. The colors, numbers, angles define binding orientation in different applications. Even the spacing might affect signal propagation.
So the flat version is also multifunctional. Blueprint, visual aid, interaction guide. Now this SCAR figure comes up constantly as the designer and developer. What does that tell us about their grasp of this system?
The sources consistently point to SCAR having a really deep, comprehensive understanding and application of all these 3D-GR principles.
It seems that way.
You see the repetition of the basic SCAR defined. 8 vertices, 12 equal edges, the 6 number-side color faces with Fibonacci proportion diagonals, the detailed steps for the 3D-GR battery, the rules for AMIS assembly, the signaling network ideas, the machine unit integration for artificial citizens. It's all presented as flowing from SCAR's 3D-GR framework.
And it sounds like SCAR even developed a whole movement system tied to it. Combat, footwork.
Oh yeah, very detailed descriptions, synchronic footwork and swordplay. Based on a specific rhythm, 3 beats per bar, 48 BPM, 3 clicks per beat.
Super precise.
The footwork heel ball stabilized lift is synced to those clicks. Each beat is a swordplay stance. Movements like strikes, binds, blocks are coordinated with specific foot positions, lock, side, tide.
Names for foot positions.
Yes. And concepts like forward time and backward time sequences in the swordplay. Specific footwork sequences too. Advance left-right, retreat left-right.
It's like a complete martial art encoded with the 3D-GR. What about the scathe arrow and the bladed bow specifics?
All right, Weapon System 3. Sources detail how rotating the wooden grip linked to orange 8 and green 9 faces, and how the 3D-GR pommel emerges from thumbs or palm base, linked to blue 3 and red 2, directly affects the blade's orientation. Rotational translations, X, Y, Z axis are key. Yeah. The bladed bow has that median 3D-GR nook, and the heart 3D-GR is the fixed anchor.
And stances too.
A whole list of Vanguard stances, specific hand positions relative to that median 3D-GR nook. Names like Pike, Viper, Estos, Shield.
It's an incredibly intricate, interconnected system SCAR seems to have designed, linking geometry, movement, weapons, even language. Finally, what was that 3D-GR sovereignty execution framework? What's the gist?
It sounds like a strategic approach. How to establish the 3D-GR as a foundational, maybe even controlling element in a larger system.
How?
It starts with the sovereign nexus, a core unchanging principle. Then harmonic expansion, developing applications that resonate with that core. Then a crystalline threshold, selectively integrating only things that align and harmonize.
Filtering.
Sort of, leading ultimately to an immutable lattice, a stable, self-sustaining, resistant framework built on these 3D-GR principles.
So not just physical stuff, but potentially establishing a whole system of thought, organization, maybe even governance, based on the 3D-GR. Wow. Okay, let's try to pull this all together. What's the absolute key takeaway from this deep dive?
I think the fundamental point is that the 3D-GR is way more than just a pretty shape. It's a foundational, incredibly versatile element. Its power comes from its precise geometry and its inherent material properties.
Right.
And those characteristics enable this huge range of really sophisticated applications. You know, from energy storage to nanomanufacturing to theoretical AI architectures, weapon design principles, even symbolic language.
All connected.
All interconnected through the underlying design principles of this one shape. It's quite remarkable.
It really is astonishing how this single structure, with math like the golden ratio and materials like graphene built in, could manifest in so many different, impactful ways. So for you listening, here's something to chew on. How might a fundamental structure like this, with all this built-in potential, keep reshaping different fields? What other, maybe unexpected applications could emerge from this kind of base lexicon of form and function? You know, think about the implications when the very shape itself dictates function across so many areas. How might that change? Well, maybe everything. Ever stop to think that the most, well, fundamental shapes might hold the secrets to some seriously advanced technology? Okay, you're definitely in the right place then, because today we're plunging into the fascinating world of the three-dimensional golden rhombus, or the 3DGR for short.
Right.
Now, I know that sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, and honestly, in a way, it is pretty cutting-edge stuff.
It really is.
But what's really blowing my mind is how this very specific geometric form, rooted in the elegant golden ratio, pops up in the most surprisingly practical and, well, diverse applications based on what we've been looking at.
Yeah, the range is quite something.
We're talking energy storage, revolutionary manufacturing techniques, maybe even how information could be processed, and, well, let's just say some potentially game-changing applications in other fields too, even a kind of language. So our mission on this deep dive really is to unpack the core of this 3DGR, what makes it tick structurally, and then explore the incredibly varied ways it's being used. What are the fundamental principles and what's the potential here?
And what's truly captivating, I think, is how taking a basic shape like a rhombus, pushing it into 3D, and then shaping it precisely with the golden ratio,
Right.
well, it transforms into this foundational piece for just a remarkable range of advanced tech.
Right.
The material we've looked through really paints a picture of something incredibly versatile, fundamentally versatile.
Absolutely. So let's really get our heads around this shape. What exactly are we talking about when we say three-dimensional golden rhombus?
Okay, so essentially the 3DGR is a three-dimensional solid. It's formed by connecting 6 individual golden rhombi, but in a very precise way.
6 diamond shapes, basically.
Kinda, yeah. Imagine taking 6 of those diamond-shaped faces and fitting them perfectly together in 3D space. It creates this single, unified form.
Okay.
And the key things to grasp are its 8 points, the vertices,
Right.
12 equal lines or edges that connect these points, and then the 6 faces themselves. And these aren't just any faces. They each have a specific number, a color, and even an associated symbolic action or direction. We'll definitely get more into those attributes.
Okay, 6 rhombi coming together, a specific way. Now, you mentioned the golden ratio. We hear that term a lot. Why is it so crucial here for this structure?
The golden ratio, roughly 1.618,
Yeah.
right? It's absolutely fundamental, not just for how it looks, but functionally.
Functionally, how so?
It dictates the precise proportions within each of those 6 rhombic faces, and also the spatial relationships between them in the final 3DGR structure.
Okay.
And this specific ratio, it's not just about looking nice. Mathematically, it contributes to the structure's inherent stability, how forces are distributed harmoniously within it.
Ah, okay.
Think of it like a kind of mathematical sweet spot for structural integrity, which becomes super important when you think about using these things at really, really small scales.
So it's not just a pretty number. It actually affects how the shape holds together, how it behaves.
Got it. Now, the details we saw get pretty granular, dimensions and stuff. What kind of scale are we talking?
Oh, yeah, very granular. The length of each of those 12 equal edges, it's approximately 2.84 nanometers.
The nanometers. Okay, wait. A nanometer is a billionth of a meter.
Exactly. Incredibly tiny. And what's interesting is that this length, 2.84 millimeter, it closely matches the typical bond length between carbon atoms in graphene.
Ah, okay. A hint about the materials, maybe?
Yeah, precisely. It points towards the materials involved. And then the faces, the rhombic faces, each one has a longer diagonal of about 4.59 nanometers and a shorter one of 2.84 nanometers.
Right. The same as the edge lengths for the shorter one.
Correct. And the angles within these faces are also exact. 120 degrees opposite the long diagonal and 60 degrees opposite the short one.
Okay.
These specific angles are critical for how those 6 rhombis fit together perfectly in 3D to make the 3DGR. Nanometers. So we're operating almost at an atomic level for some of this stuff. Okay, now let's talk about these number side color faces. That sounds really unique.
All right. This is where the 3DGR gets, let's say, another layer of complexity and potential functionality beyond just its shape.
How so?
Each of the 6 faces isn't just a flat surface. It's basically encoded with specific info. A color, a number, and a symbolic action or direction tied to it.
Like codes on each side.
Yeah.
Examples.
Yeah. So the top face, for instance, it's yellow, carries the number 1, and it's linked to the actions lunge and strike.
Okay, lunge strike.
Then the front right face. Red, number 2, signifies movement rightward and clockwise.
Wayward clockwise, okay.
Opposite that, on the front left, you've got the blue face, number 3, representing leftward and anti-rotary movement.
Leftward, anti-rotary. Different rotation.
Exactly. Then there's the bottom face, that's purple, number 7, and it's associated with grounding, foundation, stabilization.
Ah, the base. Makes sense.
Then the back right face is orange, number 8, again indicating rightward movement, but this time anti-rotary.
Okay, another rightward but opposite rotation to the front.
Correct. And finally, the back left face is green, number 9, associated with leftward and clockwise motion.
Wow. Okay, so it's like each side has a built-in instruction or a specific job to do in a bigger system.
That's a great way to put it. And the 3D-GR isn't just about these coded faces. The whole structure, it has certain symmetries, parts are mirror images, but it also has an inherent asymmetry because of the different diagonal lengths in the rhombi.
Right, not perfectly symmetrical then.
No. And maybe most fascinatingly, it has this fractal characteristic,
Fractal.
meaning a single 3D-GR can, theoretically, be subdivided into 27 smaller, self-similar 3D-GRs.
Wow, like Russian dolls, but with rhombuses.
Kind of. And this self-similarity, repeating at different scales, could be hugely significant for how these structures interact, how they build complex systems. It allows for scalability, maybe intricate networks.
Okay, so we've got this incredibly precise geometric shape, coded faces, fractal potential. How are these things actually made? What materials bring a 3D-GR to life?
Yeah, the materials are absolutely key to making the 3D-GR actually work for these applications. Our sources really hammer home the strategic integration of graphene.
Graphene, of course, the wonder material.
Pretty much. Graphene bonds are specifically put along the 12 edges of the 3D-GR.
Why the edges?
Well, graphene is known for its incredible strength, right? Durability, stability, and also its amazing electrical conductivity.
Right, conducts electricity really well.
So putting it on the edges gives the structure all those benefits. In fact, the name itself, three-dimensional graphene rhombus, highlights how crucial it is.
Makes sense. And I also saw something about graphene aerogel. Where does that fit?
Yes, graphene aerogel comes up in specific applications, especially the 3D-GR battery. It acts as a high-density electrolyte.
Electrolyte. That's the stuff ions move through in a battery.
Exactly. Think of it as the medium for ion transport between the electrodes. Graphene aerogel has this unique, super porous structure, which allows ions to move through it really quickly and efficiently.
Yeah.
That's critical for high-performance batteries.
Okay, got it. Shape, materials. Now the really exciting part. What can you actually do with a 3D-GR? Our sources listed a pretty mind-boggling range. Let's start with energy. This 3D-GR battery sounds intriguing. How does this shape help make a better battery?
Well, the specific geometry of the 3D-GR shape itself provides a kind of ideal framework for a new way of thinking about battery tech.
How so?
The precise arrangement of those 6 golden rhombi, combined with the properties of the graphene and aerogel, it facilitates really efficient energy storage and release.
Okay.
So basically, a 3D-GR battery uses a core built from this structure. The graphene bonds give it structure and conductivity.
Right.
The graphene aerogel is the fast electrolyte, and then the positive and negative electrodes, the cathode and anode, they're integrated right at the 8 vertices.
That point.
Yeah, in specific spots tailored to how the battery needs to work. So the shape isn't just a container, it's actively part of the battery's function.
So the geometry itself optimizes the battery's performance. That's clever.
Okay.
Okay, what's next? Additive manufacturing. AMIs. How does the 3D-GR fit there?
Right. AMIS, the Additive Manufacturing Information System. The 3D-GR acts as the fundamental building block in this system.
Like a tiny brick.
Sort of, but much more complex. Imagine a nanoscale construction system where these 3D-GR units can basically self-assemble into complex structures.
Okay.
Within AMIS, they organize into neighborhoods. Usually there's a central anchoring 3D-GR.
An anchor point.
Exactly. And around it are additional 3D-GRs. Sometimes these are called synchronic swords in this context, acting as more building elements.
Synchronic swords. Interesting name.
It is. And remember those colored and numbered faces?
Yeah, the coded ones.
They act as highly specific binding points, like coded connectors. They dictate the exact geometric orientation when these 3D-GR units join up during manufacturing. It ensures accuracy, making sure the intended design forms correctly.
So it's like a super advanced molecular level Lego system where the faces tell you exactly how the pieces lock together.
That's a really good analogy, actually. Complex 3D structures get built up iteratively. You attach these additional 3D-GRs to the anchoring one, and the attachment can be in different ways inverted or other specific orientations, all governed by principles based on phi, the golden ratio.
High-based rule.
Yeah, and this allows for creating incredibly intricate, efficient structures. Things like Fibonacci and lattices patterns based on the Fibonacci sequence, or even fractal architectures, all built up from these fundamental 3D-GR units.
That's mind-boggling, from batteries to essentially 3D printing materials at the nanoscale. Now, our sources also mention signaling, computation, even artificial citizenry. That sounds pretty far out.
It definitely pushes into very advanced concepts, yeah. But the underlying principles still tie back to the 3DGR's unique structure and how it can interact.
So how does it work for signaling?
Well, in the context of signaling networks, those additional 3DGRs could be used to resolve binary information. Think of them acting like nanoscale switches or logic gates.
Okay, like tiny computer components?
Sort of.
Yeah.
And the central anchoring 3DGR could then process these inputs, generating signaling pathways that spread across these interconnected 3DGR neighborhoods. You could create complex, maybe even adaptive, information processing networks.
So they could essentially communicate and make decisions at a really basic level.
That's the idea. And when we get to the machine units for artificial citizens, well, that's a conceptual layered architecture built around the 3DGR framework.
Layered how?
There's talk of a central radiation core, maybe a 3DGR, surrounded by 26 others emitting computational output.
Okay.
This core is linked to an interactive body, described as a fractal network of 3DGRs for parallel processing.
Parallel processing.
Wow. And then an array of 54 dendritic arms, acting as signal receivers for communication between these units.
So the vision is, what? Modular AI beings?
Essentially, yeah. Modular, fractal-based artificial citizens, where their energy, structure, and computation are all intrinsically linked at this fundamental 3DGR level.
That's incredible. From the tiny scale to potentially complex, self-sustaining systems, all from this one shape. Now, the sources also got into some, let's call them applied applications, weaponry. What's the 3DGR's role there?
Right. Within the framework presented, especially the stuff attributed to this individual named Scar, the 3DGR shows up as a foundational element in various weapon designs.
Like how?
Well, there are descriptions of synchronic swords called tempo and rhythm. These are presented as mirrored weapons based on the 3DGR structure.
That's how.
And they're said to incorporate the 6 face attributes, the colors and numbers, suggesting those attributes might influence how they work or how you handle them.
Interesting. What else?
There's another thing called Scathe, described as a blade with a 3DGR pommel grip that uses 5 of the face color attributes. Maybe different grips or functions linked to the colors?
A coated grip, perhaps?
Possibly. And even a bladed bow is mentioned. It apparently incorporates a central 3DGR nook and a string made of refined 3DGR units.
Wow, even the bowstring. Okay, so it sounds like the shape isn't just passive, it's actively built into the design, maybe the function of these weapons. But what about the anchoring 3DGR heart? That sounds specific.
Yeah, very specific. This is described as a 3DGR unit that's meant to be bound to the chest, specifically linked to the purple 7 bottom face position.
Bound to the chest. Wow.
It's presented as a fixed point for kinetic interaction during combat. The idea seems to be that strikes extend forward from this anchor, while blocks are performed by drawing backward against it. It suggests a way to focus and direct physical force using this central 3DGR's position.
So it's not just the weapons, but how the user interacts with them, almost like a biomechanical interface. Huh. Okay, shifting gears pretty dramatically now. The sources also suggested the 3DGR could function as a form of language. How on earth does that work?
It's a truly fascinating, quite abstract concept, isn't it?
Yeah.
The 3DGR system is presented as a potential language where the fundamental bits, the faces, edges, colors, numbers, their spatial relationships, and the interactions between them are all loaded with linguistic and symbolic meaning.
So the shape itself is the meaning.
In a way, Scar, in the context of these sources, apparently views the 3DGR as the base lexicon, like the fundamental vocabulary for potentially recoding society's communication.
Wow, that's ambitious.
Extremely. And the direct link between each face and specific actions or states, yellow for lunge strike, purple for ground and stabilize, that reinforces this idea of a fundamental vocabulary encoded right into the 3DGR structure.
So it's not just a geometric object, it's a system of meaning, a fundamental alphabet or symbol set that's really profound. Okay, let's connect this 3D form back to 2D. The sources mentioned golden rhombus tiling.
Yes, exactly. You can create a planar tessellation, a flat tiling pattern, using 6 golden rhombi. They need specific angles, 120 and 60 degrees, and the edge length has to match the 3DGR faces, that 2.84 unit length.
Okay.
And this 2D tiling pattern is geometrically congruent with the faces of the 3DGR, meaning if you could flatten out the 3DGR surface, it would perfectly cover this pattern.
Like unfolding the 3D shape onto a flat surface?
Precisely. And the golden ratio is right there, and the diagonal ratios of the rhombi in the tiling, too.
Okay, so it's like a 2D blueprint of the 3D shape's surface. Is that just a math thing, or does it have uses?
Oh, it definitely has potential practical applications according to the sources.
Here.
It can serve as a fundamental unit cell blueprint for manufacturing,
Right.
a template for arranging individual 3D-GR units.
Right, like a guide.
Yeah. Or it could be a visual aid for understanding graphene layering at the nanoscale. And within that AMI framework, this tiling could even represent a symbolic expression of linguistic tessellation, how the basic units of the language fit together.
Language tiling, interesting.
And the colored numbered faces, the angles, they can dictate binding orientation in different applications too. Even the spacing in the tiling might affect signal propagation.
So this flat version is multifunctional. Blueprint, visual aid, maybe even a guide for interactions. Okay, now these sources consistently mention this individual, Scar, as the designer and developer. What can we infer about their grasp of this whole framework? It seems incredibly comprehensive.
Yeah, the references really emphasize Scar's deep understanding and, well, comprehensive application of these 3D-GR principles.
Right.
We see the basic properties repeated: 8 vertices, 12 edges, the 6 number-side color faces, the Fibonacci golden ratio diagonals, all defined by Scar, and the described steps for making the 3D-GR battery, the detailed rules for AMS assembly, the signaling network ideas, the machine unit integration for artificial citizens. They're all presented as flowing from this overarching 3D-GR framework Scar conceived.
And it sounds like Scar even developed a whole system of movement and combat tied directly to the 3D-GR. That seems incredibly detailed.
It really does. There's a description of synchronic footwork and swordplay based on a very specific rhythm. 3 beats per bar, 48 BPM tempo, 3 clicks per beat.
Clicks per beat.
Yeah, and the footwork heel ball stabilized and then lift is precisely synced to these clicks. Each beat corresponds to a specific swordplay stance.
Okay.
And the movements, strikes, binds, blocks are coordinated with specific foot positions, right and left foot. They use terms like lock, side, tied.
Like dance notation almost.
Very structured. The sources even talk about forward time and backward time sequences in the swordplay, and specific footwork sequences like advance left-right, retreat left-right.
It's like a complete martial art form encoded using the 3D-GR as its foundation.
Wild. And what about the specifics of that Scathe arrow and the bladed bow? How do they fit into Scar's system?
Okay, so under Weapon System 3 for the Scathe arrow and bladed bow, the sources detail how rotating the wooden grip, which is linked to the orange 8 and green 9 faces.
Right, the back face.
And how the 3D-GR pommel emerges, either from the thumbs or the comm base, tied to blue 3 and red 2.
The front faces.
How those actions directly affect the blade's orientation. It mentions rotational translations XYZ axes as key to using the weapon dynamically.
So grip and hand position translate to blade movement via the 3D-GR faces.
That seems to be the idea. The bladed bow has a central median 3D-GR nook, and that heart 3D-GR anchor stays fixed for stability and force.
Okay.
And there's even a list of different endguard stances, each with specific hand positions relative to that median 3D-GR nook. Names like Pike, Viper, Estos, Shield. It's an incredibly detailed, interconnected system Scar seems to have built, linking geometry, movement, weapons, maybe even language. Okay, one last thing mentioned was a 3D-GR sovereignty execution framework. What's the gist of that?
Yeah, that sounds quite strategic. It seems to outline a potential approach for establishing the 3D-GR as foundational, maybe influential, within a larger system, maybe even a society.
How would that work?
It starts with defining a sovereign nexus, a central core identity or principle that doesn't change.
Oh, okay, a core idea.
Then comes harmonic expansion. That's where variations and applications that resonate with the core are developed and spread.
Spreading the idea.
Then the crystalline threshold. This sounds like a process of selective integration. Only things that align and harmonize with that core nexus get adopted and reinforced.
Filtering and strengthening.
Exactly. And this leads ultimately to an immutable lattice, which represents a stable, self-sustaining, maybe resistant framework built entirely on these 3D-GR principles.
So it's not just about physical stuff or energy. It could be about setting up a whole system of thought, organization, maybe even governance based on the 3D-GR.
Wow. Okay, let's try and pull this all together. What's the absolute key takeaway from this deep dive into the 3D-GR?
I think the fundamental takeaway has to be that the three-dimensional golden rhombus is way more than just a pretty geometric shape.
Right.
It represents a foundational and just remarkably versatile element. It's defined by its precise geometry and its inherent material properties. And these fundamental characteristics enable this surprisingly huge range of sophisticated applications. From efficient energy storage and batteries to intricate construction via additive manufacturing, the basis for complex signaling and AI concepts, informing weapon design, even providing a structure for symbolic language.
It connects all these seemingly separate fields.
Exactly. They're all interconnected through the underlying design principles of the 3DGR itself. It's truly astonishing, isn't it, how this single fundamental shape, loaded with mathematical elegance from the golden ratio and practical material intelligence via graphene, how it can potentially show up in so many diverse and impactful ways.
It really is.
So for you, the listener, maybe consider this. How might such a fundamental structure with these inherent properties and this multi-layered potential, how might it continue to reshape various fields going forward? What other unexpected applications might still emerge from this base lexicon of form and function? Think about the implications, the really profound implications of a design where the very shape dictates function across so many different domains, and how that might just change the landscape of tech, communication, maybe even our understanding of fundamental systems entirely.
Ever stop to think that maybe the most fundamental shapes could hold secrets to some really advanced tech?
It's a fascinating thought, isn't it?
Well, if you have, you're definitely in the right place today. We're about to plunge into the pretty amazing world of the three-dimensional golden rhombus, the 3DGR.
Right.
Now, I know that sounds maybe a bit like sci-fi, and, well, in some ways it is cutting edge.
It really is.
But what's kind of blowing my mind is how this specific geometric form, rooted in the golden ratio.
Which is elegant in itself.
Exactly. How it pops up in such practical and honestly diverse applications based on what we've been reading.
It's surprisingly versatile.
We're talking things like new energy storage, revolutionary manufacturing techniques, even ideas about information processing, and let's just say some potentially game-changing stuff in other fields too, even a kind of language.
The breadth is quite remarkable.
So our mission, you could say, for this deep dive is to unpack the core of this 3DGR. What makes it tick structurally, and then explore these incredibly varied ways it's being used.
Yeah.
What are the underlying principles? What's the potential here?
And what's really captivating, I think, is how taking a basic shape, a rhombus, pushing it into 3D, and then shaping it precisely with the golden ratio transforms it. It becomes this foundational piece for a whole range of technologies.
It really seems like it. The material we looked at paints this picture of something fundamental but incredibly flexible.
Exactly. Versatile at its core.
Okay, so let's really try and, get our heads around this shape itself. What exactly are we talking about with a three-dimensional golden rhombus?
Okay, so essentially the 3DGR is a solid shape, a three-dimensional solid.
Right.
And it's formed by connecting 6 individual golden rhombi, but in a very specific way.
6 diamond shapes, basically.
Kind of, yeah. Imagine taking 6 of those faces and fitting them perfectly together in 3D space. That makes one unified form.
Okay.
And the key features to grasp are its 8 points, or vertices.
Okay, 8 corners.
12 edges connecting those points, and they're all equal in length.
12 equal edges. Got it.
And then the 6 faces themselves. But they aren't just flat sides.
No.
No, each one has a specific number, a specific color, and even an associated symbolic action or direction.
Whoa. Okay. We'll definitely need to circle back to that. That sounds important.
It is. We'll dig into those attributes.
So 6 rhombi fitting together. Now, you mentioned the golden ratio. We hear that term thrown around a lot. Why is it so crucial here?
The golden ratio. Roughly 1.618. It's absolutely fundamental. And not just because it looks nice.
Functionally important.
Exactly. Functionally. It dictates the precise proportions within each rhombus face, and also how they relate spatially in the 3D structure.
So it governs the whole shape.
It does. And this specific ratio, it isn't just about aesthetics. Mathematically, it contributes to the structure's inherent stability.
Stability.
And the harmonious distribution of forces within it. Think of it as like a mathematical sweet spot for structural integrity.
Right, like nature uses it sometimes.
Precisely. And that becomes incredibly important when you consider using these things at really, really small scales.
So not just a pretty number. It actually affects how the shape holds up and behaves.
Absolutely.
Now, the details we saw, they get pretty granular on dimensions. What kind of scale are we talking about? Is this big? Small?
Very small. The length of each of those 12 equal edges, it's about 2.84 nanometers.
Nanometers. Okay, remind me. That's tiny, right?
It's incredibly tiny, a billionth of a meter.
Wow.
And what's interesting is that length, 2.84 nanometers, it closely matches the typical bond length between carbon atoms in graphene.
Ah, graphene. Okay. That's a clue about the materials, maybe.
Exactly. It hints at what's involved.
An acronym.
And then the faces, the rhombic faces, each one has a longer diagonal, about 4.59 nanometers,
Okay.
and a shorter diagonal of 2.84 nanometers, same as the edge length.
Got it. Different diagonals.
Right. And the angles within those faces are also precise. You have 120 degrees opposite the longer diagonal and 60 degrees opposite the shorter one. These specific angles are critical. They're why the 6 rhombi fit together perfectly in 3D to make the 3D GR.
So everything is super precise down to the nanometer scale. We're definitely operating almost at the atomic level for some uses.
That's the picture painted, yes.
Now, let's get back to those number side color faces. That sounds really unique.
It is. This is where the 3D GR gets layers of complexity and, potential functionality beyond just its shape.
Okay.
Each of the 6 faces isn't just a surface. It's encoded with information.
Encoded how?
With a specific color, a number, and a symbolic action or direction linked to it.
Can you give an example?
Sure. The top face, it's yellow, number 1, and it's linked to the actions lunge and strike.
Lunge and strike. Okay. What about another one?
The front right face is red, number 2. It signifies movement rightward and clockwise.
Rightward clockwise. Makes sense.
Then opposite that, on the front left, you've got the blue face, number 3, that represents leftward and anti-rotary movement.
Leftward anti-rotary. Okay.
Then there's the bottom face. That one's purple, number 7. It's associated with grounding, foundation, stabilization.
Purple 7 for grounding. I like that.
Then the back right face is orange, number 8. Also rightward movement, but this time anti-rotary.
Okay, another right word, but different rotation.
And finally, the back left face is green, number 9. That's leftward and clockwise motion.
Wow. So it's like each side has a built-in instruction or a specific job within a bigger system.
That's a good way to put it, exactly. And the 3D GR isn't just about these coded faces either.
There's more.
Well, the overall structure has certain symmetries, parts are mirror images of others.
Yeah?
But it also has an inherent asymmetry because the diagonals in the rhombic faces aren't the same length.
Right, the long and short ones.
And maybe most fascinating, it has this fractal quality.
Fractal, like repeating patterns.
Yes, a single 3D GR can, theoretically, be subdivided into 27 smaller, self-similar 3D GR.
27. Inside one.
That's the idea. The self-similarity across scales could be huge for how these things interact and build complex systems. Think scalability, intricate networks.
Okay, so we've got this incredibly precise geometric shape, these unique, almost coded faces, and it's fractal. How are they actually built? What materials are used?
Right, the materials. They're absolutely key to making the 3D GR work in practice. The sources really emphasize integrating advanced materials.
Like the graphene you mentioned.
Exactly. Graphene is central. Specifically, graphene bonds are incorporated right along the 12 edges of the 3D GR.
Why graphene?
Well, graphene is famous for being incredibly strong, durable, stable, and it's a fantastic electrical conductor.
Okay, all good things for a building block.
Absolutely vital. In fact, the name itself, three-dimensional graphene rhombus, highlights how crucial it is.
Gotcha. So the graphene provides the strength and conductivity along the edges. Now, I also saw something about graphene aerogel.
Yes, that comes up too. In certain applications, especially the 3D GR battery we'll talk about, graphene aerogel is used as a high-density electrolyte.
Electrolyte. Like in a regular battery.
Exactly. It's the stuff that lets ions move between the positive and negative parts. Graphene aerogel has this unique, super porous structure, which allows ions to move through it really quickly and efficiently. That's crucial for a high-performance battery.
Okay, so we have the shape, the materials, graphene edges, maybe aerogel inside. Now, for the really exciting bit, what can you actually do with a 3D GR? The sources listed a mind-boggling range. Let's start with energy. This 3D GR battery sounds cool.
It does. The idea is that the specific geometry of the 3D GR provides this ideal framework for a new kind of battery tech.
How so?
Well, the precise arrangement of those 6 golden rhombi, plus the material properties we just discussed, it all helps with storing and releasing energy efficiently.
The shape itself helps.
Yes. In essence, a 3D-GR battery uses a core built from this structure. The graphene bonds give it integrity and conductivity.
Right.
The graphene aerogel is the fast electrolyte. And the electrodes, the cathode and anode, are integrated right at those 8 vertices, those corners.
So the points become the terminals, sort of.
In specific configurations, yes, tailored to the battery design. So the shape isn't just passive, it actively helps the battery function.
That is clever.
Mm.
Using the geometry itself. Okay, energy storage. What's next? Additive manufacturing, you mentioned AMS.
Right, the Additive Manufacturing Information System, or AMS. Here, the 3D-GR acts as the fundamental building block.
Like a tiny Lego brick.
Kind of, but way more advanced. Imagine a nanoscale construction system where these 3D-GR units can self-assemble into complex structures.
Self-assemble. Wow.
Within AMS, they form these groups called neighborhoods. Typically, there's a central anchoring 3D-GR,
A main one.
and then additional 3D-GRs around it. Sometimes these are called synchronic swords in this context, acting as more building elements.
Synchronic swords. Interesting name.
And remember those colored and numbered faces?
Yeah, the coded ones.
They act as super-specific binding points, like coded connectors. They dictate the exact geometric orientation when these units join up.
So they ensure everything lines up perfectly during manufacturing.
Precisely. Accuracy is key. They guide the formation of the intended designs.
So it really is like molecular Legos, where the faces tell you exactly how they click together.
That's a really apt analogy, actually. And complex 3D structures get built up iteratively. You attach these additional 3D GRs to the anchoring one.
Ow!
They can attach in inverted ways or other specific orientations, all governed by principles based on phi, the golden ratio.
Okay.
And this allows for creating incredibly intricate structures, things like Fibonaccian lattices.
Based on the Fibonacci sequence.
Yes, or fractal architectures, all built up from these basic 3D GR units.
That is seriously mind-boggling, from batteries to, like, 3D printing materials at the nanoscale.
Mhm.
Now, the sources also mentions signaling, computation, even artificial citizenry. That sounds pretty far out.
It definitely pushes into advanced concepts, yeah. But the principles still seem rooted in the 3D GR's unique structure and how it interacts.
So how does it work for signaling?
Well, in signaling networks, the idea is that the additional 3D GRs could resolve binary information. Think of them acting like nanoscale switches,
Little logic gates.
potentially. And the central anchoring 3D GR would then process these inputs, creating signaling pathways that can spread across these interconnected neighborhoods.
Creating complex information networks.
That seems to be the idea, potentially adaptive ones, too.
So they could, like, communicate and make basic decisions.
At a fundamental level, perhaps. And when you get to the machine units for artificial citizens,
Yeah, that part.
we're looking at a conceptual layered architecture built around the 3D GR.
Layers.
There's a central radiation core envisioned as one 3D GR surrounded by 26 others emitting some computational output,
Okay, a processing core.
integrated with an interactant body described as a fractal 3D GR network for parallel processing,
A body made of these things.
and an array of 54 dendritic arms, acting as signal receivers for communication between units.
54 arms. Wow.
So the overall vision is a modular, fractal-based artificial citizens. Their energy, structure, computation, all linked at this fundamental 3D GR level.
That's incredible. From the nanoscale up to potentially complex, self-contained systems, all from this one shape. Now, the sources also got into some, let's call them applied uses, in weaponry.
Yes, that was another area covered.
What role does the 3D GR play there?
Within the framework presented, especially the stuff attributed to this individual, SCAR,
Right, Scott.
the 3D GR shows up as a foundational element in various weapon designs.
Like what?
For instance, descriptions of synchronous swords. They're named Tempo and Rhythm, presented as mirrored weapons based on the 3D GR structure.
Mirrored 3D GR swords.
And they supposedly incorporate those 6 face attributes, color, number, suggesting maybe those attributes affect how they work or are handled.
Interesting. Any others?
There's Scathe,
Right.
described as a blade with the 3D GR pommel grip. It uses 5 of the face color attributes,
A 3D GR pommel grip. Linked to colors.
maybe indicating different grips or functions tied to those colors. And even a bladed bow is mentioned.
A bow.
Yeah, with a central 3D GR nook and a string made of refined 3D GR unit.
A string made of 3D GRs. Okay, so the shape isn't just sitting there. It's actively part of the design and function.
That's how it's presented, yes.
But there was also this anchoring 3D GR heart. That sounds very specific. Binding it to the chest.
Yes. described as a 3D-GR unit meant to be bound to the chest, specifically linked to the purple 7 bottom face location.
The grounding face.
Exactly. And this anchored 3D-GR is presented as a fixed point for kinetic interaction, for combat.
How would that work?
The concept seems to be that strikes initiate forward from this anchor point, while blocks involve drawing backward against it.
So it focuses and directs force.
Suggests a way to do that, yeah, based on the central 3D-GR's orientation.
So it's not just the weapons, but how the person interacts with them, almost like a biomechanical interface.
It leans in that direction, conceptually.
Okay, now shifting gears pretty dramatically, the sources also suggest that the 3D-GR can act as a form of language. How on earth does that work?
This is maybe the most abstract but also fascinating concept. The 3D-GR system is presented as a potential language,
A language based on a shape.
where the fundamental parts, the faces, edges, colors, numbers, spatial relationships, and the interactions between them are all imbued with linguistic symbolic meaning.
So the parts mean things.
That's the idea. SCAR, in the context of these sources, apparently views the 3D-GR as the base lexicon
The basic vocabulary.
for potentially recoding societal communication, even understanding.
That's ambitious.
It is, but the direct link of each face to specific actions or states, yellow for lunge strike, purple for grounding stabilize,
Like those examples.
that reinforces this idea, a fundamental vocabulary encoded right into the 3D-GR's structure and attributes.
So it's not just geometry, it's a system of meaning. A fundamental alphabet or symbol set. That's a really deep idea.
It pushes the boundaries, for sure.
Now, let's think about how this 3D shape relates to 2D. The sources mentioned golden rhombus tiling.
Yes. A planar tessellation, basically, a flat tiling pattern.
Okay.
You can create one using 6 golden rhombi. They need specific angles, the 120 degrees and 60 degree ones we talked about.
Same as the faces.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the edge length needs to match the 3D-GR's edges, that 2.84 unit length. This 2D tiling is geometrically congruent with the 3D-GR's faces.
Meaning if you flatten the 3D-GR out, it would fit perfectly onto this pattern.
Precisely. And the golden ratio is still there, in the ratio of the diagonals within each flat rhombus.
Okay, so it's like laying the 3D shaped surface out flat. Is that just a mathematical thing, or?
It seems to have practical implications, too. It could serve as a blueprint, a unit cell template for manufacturing, showing how 3D-GRs might arrange.
Ah, a template.
It could also visualize graphene layering at the nanoscale, help understand that structure.
Okay.
And within that AMIS system, the manufacturing one, this tiling could even represent a symbolic expression of linguistic tessellation, how the language units fit together.
Wow, okay. Multi-level.
Plus, the colored numbered faces and the angles could still define binding orientation and various uses. Even the spacing in the tile pattern might affect signal propagation.
So this flat version is like a blueprint, a visual aid, and a guide for interactions. Very efficient.
Multifunctional, yes.
Now, these sources keep mentioning SCAR as the designer and developer. What can we sort of infer about their mastery of this whole framework? It seems pretty comprehensive.
The consistency is striking. SCAR seems presented as having this deep, comprehensive understanding and application of all these 3D-GR principles.
How so?
Well, we see the basic properties, repeated 8 vertices, 12 equal edges, the 6 number side color faces with those Fibonacci proportion diagonals.
Linked to the golden ratio.
Exactly. Then there are the described steps for making the 3D-GR battery, the detailed rules for assembly and AMI, the signaling network ideas, the machine unit integration for artificial citizens.
Right, all those applications.
They're all presented as flowing from this overarching 3D-GR framework conceived by SCAR.
And it sounds like SCAR even developed a whole system of movement, combat, linked tightly to the 3D-GR.
Indeed, there's quite a bit of detail on that. Synchronic footwork and swordplay,
Synchron.
based on a very specific rhythm. 3 beats per bar, 48 BPM tempo, with 3 clicks per beat.
That's incredibly specific.
And the footwork heel ball stabilized, then lift is synchronized precisely to those clicks. Each beat corresponds to a specific swordplay stance.
A whole choreographed system.
It seems so. The movements, strikes, binds, blocks are coordinated with specific right and left foot positions. Terms like lock, side, tied describe these footing.
Lock, side, tied.
The sources even talk about forward time and backward time sequences in the swordplay, and specific footwork patterns, advance left-right, retreat left-right.
It's like a martial art form, but explicitly encoded using the 3D-GR as its foundation.
That's certainly the impression given.
And what about the specifics of that Scathe arrow and the bladed bow you mentioned earlier? How do they fit into SCAR's system?
Right, under Weapon System 3. The sources detail how rotating the wooden group, which is linked to the orange 8 and green 9 faces.
The rightward anti-rotary and leftward clockwise faces.
Yes. And how the 3DGR pommel emerges from the thumbs or palm base linked to blue 3 and red 2.
Leftward anti-rotary and rightward clockwise.
How those actions directly affect the blade's orientation.
So manipulating the 3DGR parts controls the weapon.
And rotational translations XYZ axes are key to its dynamic use. The bladed bow has that central median 3DGR neck. And the heart 3DGR remains the fixed anchor point for stability and applying force.
Got it.
There's even a list of different endguard stances, each with specific hand positions relative to that median 3DGR nook.
Stances like?
Names like pike, viper, estos, shield, wall, row, scathe, piercer, knock. Evocative names.
Definitely. It's an incredibly detailed, interconnected system SCAR seems to have designed, linking geometry, movement, weapons, maybe even language.
It all seems to tie back to the 3DGR.
And finally, the sources mentioned a 3DGR sovereignty execution framework. What's the gist of that?
It sounds like a strategic approach, maybe for establishing the 3DGR as a foundational, influential element within a larger system, maybe even society.
How would that work? What are the steps?
It starts with defining a sovereign nexus, a central, unchangeable core identity or principle based on the 3DGR.
Okay, the core idea.
Followed by harmonic expansion, developing and spreading variations and applications that resonate, that harmonize with that core.
Spreading the useful parts.
Then a crystalline threshold. This sounds like selective integration, only adopting and reinforcing elements that truly align and harmonize with the core nexus. Filtering, perhaps?
Being selective.
Leading ultimately to an immutable lattice. This represents a stable, self-sustaining, maybe even resistant framework built entirely on these 3DGR principles.
So it's not just about objects or energy. It's potentially about setting up a whole lasting system. Thought, organization, maybe governance. Based on 3DGR.
That seems to be the implication of that framework, yes. A very broad potential scope.
Okay, let's try and pull this all together. If you had to boil it down, what's the absolute key takeaway from this deep dive into the 3DGR?
I think the fundamental takeaway is that the three-dimensional golden rhombus is, well, it's much more than just a nice-looking shape.
Right.
It represents a foundational and truly versatile element. Its power comes from its precisely defined geometry and its inherent material properties.
The shape and the stuff it's made of.
Exactly. And those fundamental characteristics enable this surprisingly huge range of sophisticated applications. Like efficient energy storage in batteries, intricate material construction via additive manufacturing, the basis for complex signaling and computation in theoretical AI, informing design principles for advanced weaponry, and even providing the structure for a unique symbolic language.
It covers so much ground.
And all these seemingly disconnected fields are linked, interconnected, through the underlying principles of the 3DGR's design.
It really is astonishing how this single fundamental shape, packing in mathematical elegance with the golden ratio and material intelligence with graphene, can potentially show up in so many diverse, impactful ways. So for you listening, consider this.
Yeah.
How might a fundamental structure like this, with these built-in properties and this multi-layer potential, keep reshaping different fields going forward?
It's a powerful question.
What other unexpected uses might pop up from this base lexicon of form and function? Think about the implications. A design where the very shape dictates function across so many domains. How could that change technology, communication, maybe even how we understand fundamental systems?